Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I am not your host, John DeLynn. It is November 11th, 2024.
Thanks, Dana. Hey, everyone. I'm John. I am John DeLynn. I'm here with Margie. Hey, Margie.
Hey.
And we are doing another one of our awesome panels. For those of you who have been following us this year, we did a Mormon bishops panel and a Relief Society panel, Society President panel, and today we are doing Mormon young single adults, specifically young women, and we have an amazing panel of four Mormon women who participated in the Young Single Adults program, and the participants are Julie. Hey, Julie.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Julie. We have Dana. Hey, Dana.
Hello.
You already met Dana. We have Meg.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Meg. And we have Jess.
Hi.
Hey, Jess.
Hi.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of things, what it's like to date as a Mormon young woman and woman, what it's like to be in these young single adults wards where, you know, some say they're kind of meat factories or what do they call them?
Meat market.
Meat markets? Yeah. Yeah, where the goal is to get married and get married quick and get on the Mormon train. We're going to be talking about beauty standards and gender norms and gender expectations. We're going to be talking about sexuality, and it may get a little raw. It may get a little bumpy, but it may be a little bit bloated. But that's an inside joke. But we're going to have a lot of fun today. And yeah, so where should we begin? I think it would make sense to begin by having each of our panelists just kind of do a brief introduction, let us know just a little bit about their Mormon story so we can level set. And Meg, actually, Julie, should we start with you?
Sure.
All right. Hi, Julie.
Hi. Thank you.
All right. Tell us a bit about you.
All right. Well, my name is Julie. I'm 33, and I was a convert, and I left the church about 3 years ago.
Where'd you convert?
In Sacramento, California, which is one of the armpits of California. I would say that, like, you know, Fresno and Bakersfield are top contenders, but, you know, Sacramento's up there. And, yeah, I was 13. My dad was raised Jewish, actually, and he was kind of forced into it, and he really didn't like that. And so even though my mom was Catholic, to raise me and my brothers, my dad was very, like, anti-religion because he didn't want us to be forced into anything we didn't want to do. But my parents divorced when I was 12, and my mom remarried a Mormon guy, and she kind of used that as an opportunity to re-embrace religion. And she really liked the church, and I went to her baptism, and it was kind of awesome. Like, it was so cozy and warm, and I love the hymns, and so I voluntarily, like, chose to meet with the sisters at 13, and it was pretty great. I really enjoyed chatting with them. To be fair, I didn't gain a really big testimony, but when they asked me to be baptized, I kind of felt bad to say no. There, you know, a lot of pressure there. But I had a really great time, and so I joined the church, and preteen years were pretty good. I was in California during the Prop 8 stuff, and I was a big theater kid, and a lot of my friends were, like, gay, and I was part of GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, in high school. And so... Wait,
so you're a Mormon convert kid in theater and drama while the Mormon church is trying to take same-sex marriage away from Californians.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
Really awkward, because in the temple interview, they were like, you know, do you believe in, you know, do you support any things that are not, you know, in accordance to the church? And at that time, the whole gay thing was, like, really big. And so I said, I do. And so I chose not to go on temple trips in high school. And that was, like, kind of messy with my leaders because they felt so sad for me. And they were, like, really trying to, you know, convince me to still go to the temple. I'm like, well, I don't believe this. So, you know, I'm not going to go. And I don't know exactly what happened. I kind of probably just got brainwashed over the years because, you know, when gay marriage got legalized, I was like, yeah, or, you know, I was like, that's not right. And so that was Anyway, but yeah, I got my patriarchal blessing in high school as well. And that was really big on my relationship with the church, because in my patriarchal blessing, it was if you pay your tithing and you attend all your church meetings and you obey the law of health, you will be blessed and have all these good things. And so I like never missed a Sunday. I actually really loved church. I went every Sunday and really loved it. And I wanted to take my endowments out like really young, like at 20.
Whoa.
And I prayed about it, and I asked my bishop if I could, and he told me no. And I was really upset by that, because all my friends were going on missions, and they'd gone through the temple and said how amazing it was.
Did you consider a mission?
No. I mean, more of like a backup plan, because I didn't have anything else to do. But thankfully, a good mentor in my life, one of my good guy friends, his dad was a stake president, and we were really close. And he was also a mission president, and when I chatted with him about potentially going on a mission, he gave me some very good advice, and he said a mission should interrupt plans. They shouldn't be your backup plan.
That's interesting, because they don't tell young men that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they don't tell young women that anymore. So
yeah, I don't know. But it was really good coming from him, because he had been a mission president in Slovenia, and I don't know, that really just kind of opened my eyes to, I don't want to actually serve a mission. I just don't have anything else going on. So thankfully I didn't serve a mission. But let's see.
Did you, when you started dating after high school, was it in Sacramento?
Yeah.
So you were in a young single adult ward in Sacramento?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that same bishop also told me I was not allowed to go to the YSA ward until I was over 21, despite all of my
Whoa, I've never heard that.
I know.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay.
But all of my friends were already going, and so it was just like a me thing. I don't know why. But yeah, same bishop who wouldn't let me go get my endowments out, wouldn't let me go to YSA ward.
Okay.
I don't know.
So at 21, did you take out your endowments?
Oh, no. I started going to YSA ward at 21.
Okay. But you wanted to get your endowments out, but
and he said no.
Okay. Said no, even at 21.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he said no.
Okay.
And he's like, you're not ready.
He was trying to protect your status in the church, kind of, and your eternal fate, because if you had sex after your endowments, you could get excommunicated, I think.
You think?
I think.
It's possible. I was a very late bloomer, though, so I don't know if that would have even been on my mind. But yeah, so I went to YSA ward at 21-ish, and it was fantastic. Like, I had a huge group of friends, and we all did game nights and movie nights, and some, guy in elders quorum would always have the codes to the church, and so we'd like sneak in at like 11 p.m. and play sardines and murder in the dark and stuff. It was so much fun. But they all got married like really quickly. Like a huge group of 15 people all got married except me. And
I must have felt lonely.
It was awful, and it was like really depressing, and also feeling like the leftovers, and in Mormon land, if you're not married by 25, something's wrong with you as well. And so it was really...
The word is menace to society.
It was awful, honestly. But after that, I moved to a different ward about 30 minutes north, a really nice area. And it was a completely different vibe, because it was all singles in their like mid to late 20s who had like careers and houses and were established. And church was really great, because it was... like Sunday school discussions were really intellectual and really interesting. And yeah, I had a really great time there. Dating was fine. I would get asked out in person. I also used Mutual.
That's an app?
The Mormon, like Tinder, essentially.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of like decent experiences, I guess. I was very much drank the Kool-Aid on the whole, any two people can make a marriage work if you put God first kind of a thing. And so I dated a lot of people that I was not at all attracted to, just because I'm like, oh, they look nice, or I should give them a chance, instead of actually dating people I was attracted to. And but yeah, so everything went well until about 2016, 2017, when the church switched from visiting teaching to ministering. And for whatever reason, that was it was a huge pivot, at least in my experience, because all the cool Sunday school lessons and stuff became just ministering. Everything was ministering for like a whole year. It was like trying to give a cat medicine. It was just like, shoving it down our throats. And it was just it got really repetitive and really boring. And I also, at that same time took out my endowments, and it was awful, and I hated it.
You didn't like the temple ceremony?
No,
Okay.
because it'd been built up so much, and I was really excited to go, and I'd been wanting to go for a while, but it was not what I expected, and it was
If you had to describe it in a word, what would you describe the temple ceremony as?
uncomfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, everyone is acting like this is normal, and it's very not.
Okay.
And so, like, combination of like church not being enjoyable anymore, and having to like get over the hurdle of wearing garments, which I really didn't enjoy. And then in my late 20s, I was starting to age out of YSA ward as well.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I moved to Southern Utah. And
Yeah, if you're not liking church, Mormon church, you better move to Utah. That makes all the sense in the world, right?
I mean, it was actually the perfect thing, because I realized getting out of my community and moving away from my friends made all the flaws of the church really apparent. And because it wasn't, covered with, just community and all the glaring things. I'm like, I don't think God cares if I have sex before marriage. I don't think an all-knowing, all-loving God cares if I drink coffee.
You had these realizations in Utah.
Yeah.
Of all places.
I did.
That makes all the sense in the world.
Well, and it was during COVID, and there were no activities, and I didn't know anyone, and it was a very different experience.
The Mormon wheels came off your wagon.
Yeah, it really did.
All right. Yeah. Well, Julie, tell us why you would want to come on a YSA panel on Mormon stories to share your experiences, just in a sentence or two.
To spill the tea.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Spill the tea?
Spill the tea.
You have lots of tea?
Lay it all out. Yeah.
You have lots of tea?
I think the YSA experience is very different from a lot of people who get married young, and I think it's just a whole different culture, and it's bonkers.
Okay.
So
you want to spill the tea?
I
Share
do.
the tea. Okay. Perfect. All right, Julie, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Dana, I think you're next.
All right. Hi, John.
Hi.
So my Mormon story begins back in 1991. That's when I was born. My parents were both converts to the church. They both converted as adults. And so in our extended family, they are the only LDS people. And so that kind of, different than especially a lot of people in Utah. So I was born outside of Chicago in Wheaton, Illinois. And that's where I grew up until I was 11 years old. So I think I had kind of a different, probably similar to Julie a little bit, like a different than typical Utah Mormon growing up in the church kind of an experience. And then when we were 11, or when I was 11, our family, we moved to Utah, as you do, right? As a Mormon. So we moved to Southern Utah as well. So there's another commonality there. We moved to Ivins. And so that's where my family has been. My parents have been.
Ivins is the home of Jody Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was very dark, but very, put Ivins on the map. So thank you, Jody Hildebrandt, for that. Yeah, because nobody ever knew about us until now. So I was very involved in church always. I always believed. I always tried to be just a very by the book, straight and narrow. I wanted to please everybody, and I really did believe. And so that was, my growing up. I went into Young Women's. I actually got my Young Women's medallion when I turned 13. So 1 year I did the whole thing.
Really?
And that was like, I'm very goal-oriented, very driven. And that was kind of where, that was my mindset was I'm all in, I'm committed.
Do you want to explain really quickly what that is, just so people know what?
Yeah, for sure. So in the Young Women program, which is for girls from 12 to 18 years old, kind of the teenage group in the church, that's when the children are separated. Before that, all kids are together. When you turn 12, the boys go into Young Men's, the girls go into Young Women's. And so there is a program called Personal Progress. I don't know if it's still, there's a lot of changes that have been happening.
Right.
So I don't know if I've caught up, with all of it. But it's Personal Progress is what it was called. And basically there are these different areas, these different values, and you have like a little booklet. And it's basically I kind of think about it like Girl Scouts and merit badges, right? Where there's like these different areas and you do projects and you have these experiences and you get them passed off in your book. That basically is kind of helps you to become a righteous wife and mother someday. Like that's really kind of the goal of the whole thing. And, you know, to develop you spiritually and to, you know, just kind of prepare you for that life. So, and a lot of girls, like it's meant to take the full 6 years of being in that program. And my mom was a young women's leader for a long time. And so I saw her like, you know, there were seniors in high school, they're about to graduate, and like the goal is for every girl to do it, kind of like Eagle Scouts for boys, right? I would say that's kind of maybe similar, And so I saw her like pulling some of these girls that were like seniors, like, come on, you can do it, like we got to hurry. And so I was like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to get it done now, like in a year. And I got it done in a year. Did it, So that just kind of like all that to say, that's, you know, that was me as a Mormon. That was me as a Mormon. So then, you know, middle school, high school, I was always faithful. I always believed, not to say that I didn't have challenges like any teenager does, I guess. I had a lot of mental health challenges. I had, you know, just normal teenage stuff. But, you know, our family was very Orthodox, attended everything, did everything, seminary, all of it. And so by the time I graduated high school, you know, it was onto the YSA ward, which we'll get into. So I did that whole thing. I went to college. I dated a whole bunch. I ended up going on a mission. It was the shortest mission ever. I think I was out for 6 weeks, maybe, before I came home. And I'm so grateful that I did. At the time, it was really hard, but now looking back, that was a big blessing. And then after the mission, that's when I finally went to Oz, as John calls it. I got to BYU, and that's where I ended up finishing out my bachelor's degree. And then, do you want me to kind of just get into my like faith crisis?
When I meet the wizard, my whole life will change.
It did. My whole life changed. It was incredible. It was the best ever. But I graduated from BYU without being married, which is a big part of my story. It was absolutely devastating. And like people might like laugh or whatever, but it was devastating. I mean, yeah, I never thought that would ever happen.
Why is that bad? For never Mormons, why is it bad to graduate from BYU not married?
Well, first of all, because you're old. By the time you graduate college, I was really old. I graduated when I was 24.
And in Mormonism, spell it out for us.
Yeah, so 24. So 24 is menace to society, right? Like a lot of my friends, pretty much all of my friends at that point were married. People at BYU, it's very, very common for BYU students to get married at any point during their schooling. And it's very common to see graduation pictures with, you know, a husband and a wife on the husband's graduation day, but then also like a baby or two in the picture too, because they're already a parent. And BYU is, it's Mormon Mecca, and that is where you go to find your eternal companion.
To be chosen. The idea is to be chosen.
I mean, it is where I found mine.
Yeah. And you, I mean, clever. That was what a treasure that you found, John. That was my goal, you know. Yeah. I wanted to be Margie and find my John, and it didn't happen. And so, you know, you really just kind of, we'll get into this more, but it's kind of almost impossible not to believe that there is something inherently wrong with you as a person when you are doing everything that you can. You're righteous, you're cute, you're, you know, if I may say so myself, especially back then, you know, it's been like 10 years, but.
Oh, come on now.
But you know, like it's just, you know, what is wrong with me? And being conditioned like through that whole personal progress and young women's program too, throughout all my teenage years, it was, you will become a wife and a mother, and that's going to be the greatest thing ever. And so just the fear of, I'm graduating college, I'm not going to be a college student anymore. What am I going to be? I'm not going to be a wife yet, right? Like I'm like I'm going into a non-student YSA ward, like, like that's, terrifying. Terrifying, yeah. So there's
this tier difference, and I don't want to lose track of your stories, but so there's like BYU YSA wards or student YSA wards, and then non-university student YSA wards, and there's a difference. How would you do if y'all were to describe the difference at a high level? What's the difference? Is there a big difference?
I mean, go ahead.
I feel like the mood is different. When you're in the student ward, you're there and you're like kind of like hungry because it's the meat market. And then when you move to the non-student ward, it's a little bit more depressing because everyone kind of realizes you're all in this together, but you're also not all in this together. And I think that is something that's really difficult to come to terms with.
I'm almost getting kind of Land of the Broken Toys vibes.
Very much.
The non-student
Island of Misfit Toys.
Is that kind of the vibe? It's like, we're all the ones that didn't get married at one of the BYUs.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think so.
Yeah. It's like the airport. You didn't actually catch the flight. You're still at the airport.
That is such a good analogy.
So you're waiting.
Yep, you're waiting, and that is your goal. Your ticket hasn't expired, but it's not time to go.
And as a non-student ward, like even the normal YSA ward is very much like, we don't know what to do with you, so we're going to corral you all and put you over here. And it's under the impression, they tell you that it's like, oh, well, we just want you to have people your own age and to get married and blah, blah, blah. But it does feel like if you choose to stay in your home ward, then you are definitely, like, it's awkward and it's weird. And why are you here?
Okay. Perfect. Keep going. Yeah, this is good. Thanks, Dana.
Yeah. So I graduated from BYU. I, throughout this whole time, I've been dating and nothing's coming of it. And it's every breakup completely devastating, and I even my voice is starting to crack just talking about it like that. But anyway, then
devastating because Mormonism teaches our purpose in life is to have a temple marriage and eternal marriage with kids. Yep. And so every relationship is super high stakes.
Every date is super high stakes. Not even every relationship, every date, and I know it's kind of laughed about and joked about, but every date is an interview for marriage. And especially as a young woman, I mean, I can't speak for young men, but it feels like a very unequal power dynamic between young men and young women where, and again, I don't want to speak for men and I could be totally off on how they perceive it, but as a woman, the way that I perceive it is that women, we have been taught we need to get married. It feels like men have all the power, which Mormonism, hello, right? Yeah, they do have all the power, but in those relationship dynamics, that a man, it's like a man is going, like you said, right? You want to be chosen, and so you are just trying to be as pleasing to this man in lots of different ways to be chosen. And so it's from that first date, you're trying to hook them in. You're trying to find that eternal companion. Yeah. So
it kind of reminds me too a little bit of women raised in the church, it being just such a small box that you only really have value inside that box.
Yes.
Meaning in this one way, married, have children, so it's reminding me as you're going through your story, this moment of realizing maybe when you graduate from BYU, now I'm outside the box. I'm outside this space where I have value. And then every date is a potential ticket of getting back into the box.
Onto the path.
Then you'll have the value again.
Yes, absolutely. As a BYU student, you kind of, or any college student, you're kind of okay, well, I'm in college, right? Which most Mormons, I would say they do get married in college or by college age, but it gives you kind of that out. But yeah, you're absolutely right. At that point, you're oh, now I'm just kind of free falling. What am I doing here? So it was about a little over a year after I graduated from BYU, got a job, worked, all of that. And then that was kind of when my faith crisis kind of came on, and it actually was precipitated by being single in the church, and that just really, really not working and just being way too painful, and just trying to make it work. And it just, at least for me, didn't work.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense.
But you were in YSA wards for...
So for about, let's see, I don't know, 6 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So from when I was 18 to 20, no, I'm getting this. Sorry. 8 years, I think. I think it was, 7 or 8 years. I was in different YSA wards. Yeah, all over the place.
And Julie, how many years were you in YSA wards, do you think?
10 plus.
10 plus years?
Yeah. Because I left the church officially like 3 years ago. So 31.
Okay.
So,
would you say YSA wards contributed to your disaffection too?
oh, completely.
Okay.
Because as I reached my late 20s, I realized that, I didn't believe that, sex outside of marriage was a sin. And what happens if I choose not to get married anymore? And maybe I don't want to get married. And if I don't get married, how do I fit in to the church? And how does the church view single people? Like, not just single women, like single guys in the church are like weirdos,
Yeah.
And which is terrible. And you can't hold a high calling if you're not married as well.
Right.
And so you can't be bishop. You can't do anything if you're not married as a guy. And so... yeah, it was very much like, what if I don't want to get married and I don't think this is working for me anymore? And there's just so much pressure. There's it's just a deadline, It's, are you going to age out? Are you going to get married? You need to have kids. You need to get married. And so once I was like, you know what? Why is the plan of happiness making me so miserable? I'm going to step back, not go to church for a while. Also, my ward was at 8:30 in the morning, and who wants to do that? And so I took a step back, stopped going for a while, and it was just weight lifted off my shoulders. Like, I don't have to worry about getting married anymore. I don't like this. There's no deadline.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final things your overview story did?
I think that pretty much, do you want us to kind of give like our
Intention? Yeah. Why did you want to come on
that'd be
More
great.
Stories?
Yeah.
And
So
be on this panel.
So I have found a lot of comfort and a lot of knowledge that has, honestly kind of changed the trajectory of my life through Mormon stories, not to sound too dramatic, but I was talking with John about the first Mormon Stories episode that I ever watched and how it just helped. It just was so validating to me. And I'm a person, I need a lot of validation. And so just to feel seen and heard and, that I'm not crazy. And so if I can, be that voice. And I'm so happy that you guys are doing this panel because I really believe that that women and single women especially are underrepresented maybe because the story really is so often the early marriage, all of that. And so if I can just be like one voice out there to speak out and say, maybe just be a little bit critical and push back a little bit and talk about what happens when it doesn't work. And I brought my scriptures. I brought my
that's a Glennon Doyle book.
Yes, the Gospel of Glennon Doyle. This book, like I got it when it first came out. It was like during COVID 2020, and it's gotten me through a lot of different points in my life. But she just has some really good one-liners, and I had a couple things like as far as my intention goes. I think she just says it best. But blessed are those brave enough to make things awkward, for they wake us up and move us forward. So I'm okay with making things awkward. I'm okay with
Brilliant.
Putting myself out there into awkward places. Brave means living from the inside out in every uncertain moment, turning inward, feeling for the knowing and speaking it out loud. So that's what I'm doing today. And sometimes being brave means letting everyone down but yourself. So I know that by being here and by talking about these things, there probably are going to be some people that maybe feel like I'm letting them down. But I'm being true and authentic to myself and letting myself speak where I felt like I could not speak for so long.
Beautiful.
So much love for that.
Thanks, Dana.
Yeah.
All right. On to Meg. Hey, Meg.
All right. Hello. I'm Meg. I'm from Bountiful, Utah. I'm 25 years old, and I had the completely Utah Mormon experience growing up.
And tell everyone where Bountiful is.
It's just north of Salt Lake, like right there. A lot of the general authorities live there. And so I was
That's where Elder Jeffrey Holland, I think,
yes,
raised his family.
Yep. And then President Nelson and President Uchtdorf, they were all in kind of the area where I grew up. So kind of the limits were on, everyone knew, and everyone was very devout in my area.
Were you in the shadow of the Bountiful Temple?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. About 15 minutes away, so I sometimes go on runs there and back because it's a really nice 10-mile run. So that's kind of the area that I grew up in. My family definitely is very religious. My parents had very high callings, and they were very devout. I always personally struggled with the church. In Young Women's, I really didn't like that we always had to sing. I don't know why that was like the biggest thing for me, but it was always the young women sing, and the young men never had to sing. And I was like, why? I hate singing. They also got to do the fun, like high adventure. We did crafts, which I love crafts, creative person, but I'm also very into sports. So really in high school, I started having doubts. I really didn't believe. I'm intellectual and kind of very into academics, and stuff just never clicked for me. It never really did. And so following high school, I just stopped going to church. I still was following the rules, you know. I was making sure that I lived according to the standards, but I really wasn't going. And after finishing college, I moved out to the East Coast. And I will say the church does an incredibly great job of providing community, being immediately integrated into a social circle. That's where I met one of my best friends to this day. And so I went socially, and I didn't go to sacrament meeting or any of the like classes afterwards because I was on the Munch and Mingle committee, which we can talk about in detail.
Munch and Mingle?
Munch and Mingle.
Oh.
Mingle and munch, if you will, sometimes. Basically, after the 2-hour block, you could get together with members of the ward, and there was food provided, and just a chance to kind of talk. Where I was going in the East Coast, YSA Philadelphia ward, it was a really great time because there wasn't a lot of people that had family out there, so that was kind of like the family dinner for the week. Then I moved back to Utah, and I started having a lot of mental health struggles that I do relate to the church, and I decided to kind of re-examine everything in my life and decide...
Is it fair to say the YSA experience was a part of that mental health experience? Or
yes.
Okay.
I think when I was in Philadelphia, it was more just a group of friends. And then my friends started getting married, and the ward started changing. And that was really hard because I had such a great group of friends. And then I moved back to Utah, and I went to a singles ward, and it was just like, oh, I forgot what it was like just because I really hadn't been to church in a couple of years at that point. And I just really struggled with it. My mental health I started struggling with that a lot, and I took a step back and said, I'm going to re-examine everything in my life, the church, my education, my job, what do I really want to pursue? And so after taking that step back, it kind of came to the conclusion of like, I am a lot happier when I'm not going to Relief Society, when I'm not going to church. I still decided I'll go to sports activities. I love playing volleyball. And even that came to the point where I kind of felt I could be free and independent. And that was a really beautiful moment for me to kind of come into my own and recognize, like, I get to have a voice, I get to do what I want, and it's not going to be anything like what I was taught or what I was raised to kind of believe in. I've always been very independent. Going to college, I actually didn't feel any pressure to get married because I was like, I'm going to be like corporate boss bitch, babe. I'm rising to the top.
Hell yeah.
It turns out that was actually not, that was part of the things that got re-examined.
Hey, but you explore.
I explored, yeah. And so I was always just very academically competitive and had a really great group of friends, but marriage was never really on the mind until I came back to Utah, and that's really when it started going downhill, just because there was such a pressure, and I didn't really understand why. I was like, well, can I just go get an education and like continue my career? And a lot of people were like, you're stuck at the airport, babe. Like, let's get you on a flight. So, yeah, so I'd say about 2 years ago is kind of when my faith deconstruction began. And from there on, I've just been re-examining every part of my life, and I've really come to love it. I think my biggest intention for coming on Mormon Stories is to let others know that it's okay. It's okay to be in a space where it's uncomfortable. It's okay to be in a space where you don't know, and your worth isn't dependent on your faith at all. And so just, it's cliche, but if you go find yourself and love yourself, you're going to be so much happier than if you try and fit into a box.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I just want to say, when we screened for panelists, we didn't screen for people that had a bad experience with YSA. We didn't screen for people that, you know, for whom the YSA experience gave them depression or, you know, was wrecking their lives. So that's 3 for 3, sort of just like what stories came to us. So, I mean, it's not so far not a very good batting record for the YSA program for women, almost kind of randomly. Because again, yeah.
Yeah, and as the person who went through the submissions, I actually don't remember a very positive female YSA experience coming through in any submission.
And I mean, that might be bias, like,
it's
you know,
Mormon
Stories bias. But not necessarily. Like I feel like my Mormon upbringing was fantastic. Like I was a guy, you know, and straight, right? Like it was great.
Right.
White, straight. Yeah. But I mean, anyway, I think the majority of people we interview on Mormon Stories say they had a great Mormon experience.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, there's that statistic that I think we may have heard from someone in this room that like 40% of returned missionaries are leaving the church within 6 months. And I would bet the YSA experience might be part of that reason for the disaffection. I think there's a problem with the YSA experience.
So.
I think if you've been told your entire life you have one purpose and you can't fulfill that purpose and it's just kind of pushed on you over and over again, it's just like, well, why am I even doing this thing instead of really letting people have individuality and conforming? I think
and not
that's
fulfilling the purpose, like from no fault of your own, like despite trying and working so hard on it. And especially like it sounds like, you know, you're a high achiever, right? You set goals, you're a go-getter, you're a boss bitch. And so like I kind of identify with that as well. And like that's like the one area in my life where I can't make that happen on my own.
Yeah.
And so that's just the most frustrating thing is like I can, you know, get this degree and I can get this job and I can buy my own house and I can do all of it, except I can't, you know, make somebody marry me.
Yeah,
you're in a PhD program, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What's that idea of like perfected through everything? And it was the area that I could not perfect no matter what. And that was a very big part of my deconstruction and re-examining myself was, why do I need to be perfect? Like, why is that an actual thing? And it's still something that's difficult for me today, but saying like, if everyone was perfect, like that would actually be no fun because there would be no failure and there'd be nothing that we could learn. So.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Meg, thanks for sharing the intro to your story. Thanks for coming on.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. And that leaves us with Jess. Hey, Jess.
Hi.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about your story's a little bit different than the other three because... What do you want to say? Go ahead and say.
I mean, there's lots of ways that it's different. I guess starting from the top, I'm Jess. I'm 25. Technically, I'm still in YSA, but I have reached menace to society level. I am from small town Arizona. My family, we grew up in the church. Currently, my two brothers aren't really doing the church thing right now. But my parents are super faithful, believing members. I am in a really strange place. I'm currently going to BYU.
That's what I meant by your story is different. You're currently a BYU student.
Yeah, I am. I'm at BYU right now.
And we have to just acknowledge some would say that's introducing some risk into your life to speak openly and even to come on Mormon Stories as a BYU student.
Yeah.
And we talked about this ahead of time.
Right. Yeah. I think from a like completely reasonable human being point of view, nothing I say should get me kicked off, but we've seen recently that it doesn't necessarily have to be like a reasonable human being kind of point of view. But so, I mean, in that case, for people who don't know, if you enter BYU as a member and you can no longer, they have what's called an ecclesiastical endorsement, where it's an interview with your bishop, and you basically have to affirm that you believe all of these things. It's kind of like a temple recommend interview, but to go to school. So, and with that, I haven't really felt safe to fully question and examine my beliefs. And so I guess at this moment of time, I would consider myself a member with concerns. like I said,
if you leave the church as a BYU student,
Oh,
stop
yeah.
going, lose your faith.
you get expelled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to have sex or drink coffee or
yeah,
heaven
no.
forbid.
If you, for last time I renewed my ecclesiastical endorsement, it was almost the only thing that was wrong was that I had a really hard time saying that I sustained the first presidency. And that was like one thing that I almost needed to change schools just because of that. So that's a whole other conversation. It's frustrating, but yeah, it's been an interesting ride. My family comes from pioneer stock. I have lots of like pioneer lore in my family. Somewhere out there's a sword that Joseph Smith gave to one of my great grandpas, and his wife sewed the first pair of garments. Like we're really. You're
in the lore.
Oh yeah, we're deep.
You're in the founding lore.
Yeah. Yep. Which I always found, deep pride in that. I was a really scrupulous kid. I was really, really in it, and I loved it. I think one time my mom was cooking with wine, and I found out, and I scolded her. I was like, Mom, how dare you bring that into our house?
You're like, are you trying to ruin us all?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, and I would often like drag my family to church, and I would, I was a pretty judgmental kid, and I don't know. And I was always really worried about how to be more righteous. I remember when I got my patriarchal blessing, it talked about if you want to go on a mission, it'll be really good. And I was like, well, if I want, like, should I go or not? And I was like, I remember reading my journal, and I'm like worrying about it, specifically because I had a crush on a guy. And I was like, okay, well, it's either going on a mission or marrying this guy. And I'm like a freshman in high school.
You're like, clearly these are the only two options available to me.
Yeah, and so I was really stressed out about it. I was seeking, counsel from my elders, a junior in high school. So, yeah, really, really into it. I went to college for a year after high school, skipping forward a little bit, and decided that I did want to go on a mission. And so after some road bumps, which might come up, maybe not.
YSA road bumps?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, YSA road bumps. Dating road bumps. One, yeah, one and the same. I ended up, I went on a mission. I went to North Carolina, and I feel like in my mind I have two missions. I have the bad mission, then I have the good mission. They kind of existed side by side, but I would just kind of like slip into. I think I filed my memories into two different missions. It's hard for me to see them in a nuanced way. I'm either like, oh, my mission was awesome, or I'm like, oh, that was the worst thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I got home, and I decided to go to BYU because it's the Lord's university. And my mission, I remember Elder Bednar came to visit our mission, and he was like, if you go back to normal after this, your entire mission will have been a waste. And I was like, oh, I spent a lot of time and money and heartache here, and I do not want it to be a waste. So I was like, I'm gonna go to BYU. I'm gonna, get married, find somebody, and life's gonna be perfect. I came back. I went to BYU, and as I started to become more educated and kind of learn more about myself and who I am outside of church, specifically politically, like I got really into politics, and I kind of realized that like my moral compass points a little differently than the church. And that was troubling to me. And I couldn't understand why, because the church gave me my moral compass. And so how is it possible for me to be seeing discrepancies? And so, you know, dealing with that a lot, and then finally giving myself permission to believe other sources and come to trust other sources, and learning things that, you know, you don't learn in Sunday school, that, you know, demand to be grappled with. Mm-hmm. So that's a
summary.
Yeah. You know.
And why would you want to come on the podcast and on this panel, and especially as a current BYU student?
Yeah, I've been working on not being afraid to have conversations. I think it's really about respecting myself and using my voice when I have the opportunity to. And really similarly to Dana, I think I have found a lot of comfort in this arena where I've kind of been like stuck in the middle for quite some time. And I want to be that voice, you know, if my experience resonates with somebody else, they know that they're not the only one. But also if it doesn't resonate with someone, I would hope that could be a way for them to expand their perspective a little bit. Mm-hmm. So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, we've done our intros. Let's dive in. Let me just start, if it's all right, with some Mormon theology and probably some Mormon policy that we've already touched on briefly, but I'm just going to ask you all to comment on, any who wants to, on what's the problem with the church's sort of goals and ambitions for you, for women specifically. So I think the church probably believes that a woman's place is generally in the home. That's the best place for a woman. That a woman is, you know, the Family Proclamation, the first presidency sign, the top church leaders sign, says that a woman, her role in life is to have babies, to nurture them, to create a beautiful home for her husband, for herself, and for her children. And that ultimately you'll find the most joy and fulfillment as a woman having and raising children, that's the noblest calling you'll have. And that by doing that, you'll be able to, with your husband and your children, all go to the celestial kingdom when you're all dead and be together forever, and probably reign and rule in the heavens as a god and goddess over your own worlds and kingdoms forever and ever. And by the way, you get to raise these beautiful children who you'll help them be righteous and faithful, and you'll have all sorts of joy with the big posterity, you know, being in charge of a beautiful home. So like, I think that's the church's vision for you. What's wrong? Is that okay? How do y'all feel about that church's vision for you? You like it? You don't like it? Any problems? And we'll go in reverse order. So Jess, we'll have you go first.
Yeah. So I definitely got that messaging at church.
Did I get it wrong, or did I?
No. I what I will say is that at home with my family, I didn't super get that message. You know, the message
from your parents, you're saying?
Yeah. The message at church was upheld, but my family is also really big on education. My mom works. I think
this is a non-traditional Mormon home.
I guess so. I wouldn't have considered it that at the time. Yeah. And I don't think my parents would consider it non-traditional at all. But it was assumed that everyone was going to go to college and everyone was going to get an education and get a job. Like I grew up being like, yeah, I'm going to have a career. I grew up thinking, yeah, I'm going to have a family, but I was like, I'll do both.
Surely, you know, do you know that that's kind of, you know, I've probably interviewed hundreds of women on Mormon Stories, and you might be one of the only women I've ever interviewed that got that message growing up. I'm not trying to gaslight you or.
No, yeah.
Are you aware that you're probably super rare?
I mean, I'm I'm vaguely aware.
Okay.
I'm like, I have a hard time believing that. Like, I know that a lot of people get the message that like you should just be home, but yeah,
that's not your that's not your experience. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I know other people have had different experiences, but yeah. So, I mean, I feel lucky. My parents are really great. But once I got to BYU, and it's funny because my parents specifically wanted to raise us outside of Utah. And I could never understand that. I came home from my mission and I was like, I would like to transfer to BYU. And my parents were like, are you sure? I don't think you'll like it. And I was like, what do you mean? What's there not to love?
When you're with the wizard,
yeah, exactly.
your whole life will change.
So, but it really is different, and it's so hard to articulate the differences. They're just so, it's so hard to describe. Yeah. But once I got here, I really started to feel the pressure of getting married. I mean, maybe it's a virtue of just getting older, and I happened to be at BYU, but yeah, I think I really started to feel it once I got here.
Yeah.
So you're just a summary of how you feel the Mormon Church's proclamation on the family. It's laying out of what a woman's life should be. How do you feel about that?
Frankly, I don't think I could tell you like the tenets of the Family Proclamation right now.
It's not that relevant to your life. Okay, that's fine.
I don't know.
Let me ask you a question this way.
Yeah, for sure.
In your experience at BYU with other, women you knew at BYU, how, did you find other people like yourself that were planning on working? I'm curious if it's generational, if, it's actually something that we're seeing more in younger, like in a different generation now that may be changing. Like in your experience, in your friendships, has it changed? Do you think women are like, no, I'm going to have a job and I'm going to be a Mormon mom?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of a combination of different things. I think from a secular perspective, it's really difficult to have only one income per household unless you're really raking it in. But then also I think, I guess to directly answer your question, I think a lot of my friends and people that I know have that perspective as well. But I think that's also probably because I'm in college. And so I'm sure some people are there getting their MRS degree or whatever. But I think a lot of people are there to actually get a degree and they have an idea of what they want to do as a career. I will say that I think some people are working towards a career, but it's more of like a just in case I don't find somebody.
Yeah. Backup plan.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think generally we're moving towards there. A variety of variables that are pushing us there, but yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
And just to put a fine point on it, so if I were to state to you my understanding of the church's desires for you that they think will lead to your greatest happiness, your role, Jess, is to get married to a Mormon guy, have as many babies as you can, build a beautiful home, stay home, not have a job, not work outside the home, nurture your children, make your husband happy, cook, clean, make a beautiful home, and then have grandbabies.
I would add to that. It's also serve the rest of the day. So if you have extra time, then Relief Society yourself or Young Women yourself, or you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's serve.
How does that feel for you in the life you want to live? And there's no right answer, obviously.
How does it feel for me? I think a lot of that would be great. Okay. I genuinely do. I do want to have a family, and if I were privileged enough to not have to work, I think I would still, want to do something outside of family. I have done some babysitting, nannying work, and I know people say it's different when it's your kids, but sometimes I have a hard time believing that. And I'm just like, this is a lot right now. But I think there's parts of it. I would love to have a family. I do. I really want to have a family. it's the church ideal, it's the Disney ideal, it's the Western ideal. Like,
yeah,
a lot of layers.
yeah.
And we're validating of
Yeah.
that. So for you, that's not a bad fit.
And I'm also hearing, that exactly, that it kind of feels like a good fit.
It's a good fit.
Yeah, for me.
Okay,
And
perfect.
I recognize that it's not a good fit for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
we'll see how the other panelists
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah,
All right. On to you, Meg. As I've kind of tried to lay it out, how does that future fit for you? And what
Yeah.
you want?
Well, I think the first thing is it's very interesting because there's like this idea of agency, and it's like, but you actually should want to choose this. Like, you can choose, but these are the right choices. I do know, so I'm very independent. I hate the status quo of like singing in young women. It's like, I don't know why that just made me so mad. It did. Anyone who knows me will know that. So I think that being taught that, I was always like, absolutely not. That is not going to be for me. That's not what I'm going to do. And that really has informed what I have done, the career choices I've made, and where I'm going to grad school now is because I've kind of been following that path in my own. And I will say, growing up, my dad was very encouraging of like, we would talk the stock market. I'd watch CNBC with him, and I'd be like, why is this red? Why is this green? And at 7 years old, I don't think you should do that. But that's what I was doing. And I think that the way that he encouraged me to pursue that, and kind of both my parents recognized early of like, yeah, she's not going to go with the grain. That really did give me confidence in going into college and being like, I am going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to be independent. And I think that was something that was difficult for me in the YSA, was the fact that it was like, you should want to choose this and it should be your like biggest dream. And I was like, but it's not. And so I think now there's an idea of I still do want a family, but it's not going to be like lots of kids. It's maybe 1 or 2 kids, and being able to prioritize both having a career as well as having a family, and doing that in a way that's comfortable for me.
Right.
Versus the way that I was, a lot of the education I received in seminary, and I never went to institute because they always had this thing of like, it's a degree that you can actually get, like a degree of glory. And I was like, fuck that.
Did you just say the F word?
I did on Mormon Stories. So
Be you. You be you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
that's my experience.
Perfect. Okay, good. All right. Dana, you're next.
Okay. So, I've had a lot of thoughts as I've been listening to you guys talk about this. So I would say, as far as the generational thing, Margie, I definitely have seen a shift. I think that, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. I've had friends, like when I was at BYU and, like in that singles ward, YSA ward, I had friends who were in college. And again, I kind of see what Jess is saying, where it's kind of like a sampling bias almost, where it's like, well, if I'm in college, then the people that I know are in college. And a lot of the time that means that they are pursuing some type of a career. But I had friends that, following them on Facebook, seeing their life trajectory, like they did get married and they did have a baby, but they're also, have some like big fancy job, like in San Francisco or whatever. And so they kind of are having it all. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that, which is great. That's awesome. And I think that would be more of the vision that I would have had for myself. So growing up, yes, absolutely. All of that, John, like that was the dream, right? I would have like literally just daydreams about my life, right? Like I was like, can I just, can we skip to the good part, right? Can I wake up and have a family and be a wife and all of that? That was the dream. And I think, did the Family Proclamation come out in the 90s? Mm-hmm. Okay, so like as I'm growing up, right, like that is kind of in my sphere of influence, and that was a big thing, like, and I took that seriously. It was a very, that was a big influence in my life. I would say that whole idea, that was a big part of what made being single so hard for me, because that was the dream, that was the goal. And so when it's not happening, it becomes incredibly difficult. I will say I had a hard time deciding what to major in college, similar to you guys, where my parents were very supportive of me getting an education. They had money set aside, like they were all in for it, for all of their kids. And I'm so grateful for that. But it took me a little while, and I switched schools and I switched majors. But I think looking back, I'm like, I had such an internal struggle where I knew that I was going to be a wife and a mom. And so it's like, what do I pick that feels true to me, but also is going to fit in with that? And so I've always wanted to be a teacher, and spoiler alert, that's what I ended up doing and being. But, I went through some times and I decided that I was going to major in fashion merchandising when I was in college. I was a sophomore in college, so I actually moved out to Boston and went to a school that specialized in fashion. And I was only there for a semester. It ended up being kind of a disaster, mental health-wise, dropping a Utah Mormon into, Boston.
Big bad Boston.
What was that?
Big bad Boston.
Yeah, big bad Boston. And, the college scene out there is no joke. Like, these people, like, they know how to, like, drink their alcohol.
They college hard.
Yeah. No, they college hard. Like, they party hard out there. So it was just a complete shock for me. Anyways, it was hard being out there, but I was really excited and passionate about, I wanted to be like a buyer for Nordstrom or something like that. Or, I had like an internship lined up with anthropology. Like it was just awesome, like amazing opportunities that I was so excited about. But I can remember a moment in time where I just said, you know what? This is going to be a lot of money. Like, it was expensive, right, to go to school out there. This is going to be a lot of money. I'm away from my family. And realistically, is this going to be worth it? Because when I get married and have kids, can I go be a big buyer for Nordstrom, right? Can I go and realistically do this? And my answer was like, no, like, that's not, that's not my path. And so I shut that down and went to BYU. My major at BYU was Family and Consumer Science Education. FACS for short, which is the new name for home economics. So I literally became a home economics teacher. And I did have, I remember I was like walking home from YSA Ward Church one day with like some random guy. And, we're like talking and he's like, well, what's your major? And I'm like, family and consumer science. And he goes, oh, so you're getting a mommy major? That's what he called it. He called it a mommy major. I was like, excuse me. But it really was all of the things. Like, I didn't just pick that major because I'm like, oh, this is going to like turn me into the perfect Mormon housewife. Honestly, I've always been the perfect Mormon housewife. And I will just say, like, this is what bothers me so much is that I would have been the best Mormon wife ever, like committed to the church. Righteous, all these things, like creative, wanting to raise kids, a great cook, like crafty, creative, right? Like fun, all of these things.
The next Relief Society president.
Yes, absolutely. And I was a Relief Society president in the YSA wards, but that was me. And so that major kind of at BYU kind of wrapped in all of my interests. So anyway, that was what I ended up doing. And again, even like graduating BYU, okay, now I'm a family and consumer science teacher. Marry me, right? Like, hello, like here I am. So anyway, that's what I would say about all of that. That it definitely has, I would say, like kind of fucked with my life choices and my feelings. And, now I'm in a place where, and I don't know if we want to like get into this right now, but I actually, for some different health reasons, I had a hysterectomy and had my ovaries removed a few months ago. So it's like very recent. And like I've been out of the church for 8 years. And it's still like, I mean, for any woman, right? Like that's going to be incredibly hard. Probably, I don't know. But for me, where I always wanted to be a wife and a mom, and now, like that's not so much, the wife part isn't so much on my radar. The mom thing definitely is. And so, that's hard to just have that completely taken away. And it is so Mormon. And I think it would be hard for anybody, but somebody who is raised and believed so deeply in Mormonism and in that ideal of who a woman is, right? Divine nature, my divine worth, my divine nature is in being a wife and a mom. And so to like have that just be so final, it was hard. It was really hard, and it still is.
Yeah.
And I hope to maybe adopt still someday. But like, it's weird just to even think I will never have like biological, like, because the church, it's so much like, your ancestors and you're passing things down. And I mean,
your posterity,
right? Yeah, posterity.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the word, right? Posterity. Like, I'm like, sorry. But I don't have, like it's just not going to happen for me now. And obviously, like, that sounded really bad. I'm saying like, if and when I adopt, obviously, like, that child is my child,
right.
And all of that. But
give to her.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyways, that was kind of a but yeah, as far as talking about the ideal wife, the ideal mother, the ideal woman in Mormonism, really, I've kind of failed. Even though I tried so hard, and I really am, like, deep down who I am, I have so much love to give, and I have so much to offer in so many different ways, intellectually, spiritually, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen, and I'm grateful, don't get me wrong. I'm so grateful for where I am in my life right now, but it's hard.
That's right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's really personal and sensitive stuff.
Yeah.
No. And I just thought I'd Google, for infertility, issues. And what Google AI is telling me is that about 15% of couples in the U.S. have trouble conceiving children. Yeah. 9% of men of reproductive age have fertility problems, 11% of women. And married women, about 19% of married women aged 15 to 19 with no prior birth are unable to get pregnant after 1 year of trying. So there's got to be a cost of the church saying babies, 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 babies.
A huge cost.
When 1 out of 10.
There's so many people who are struggling with it. And the fucked up part is I've known so many people who get married super, super young, right? 18, 19, 20. And by the time they're 21, 22, they haven't gotten pregnant yet. And they are, they're barely, they're not even in their mid-20s, and they're already in this crisis of infertility, which I feel for them for sure. But that's just sad that you, to have that burden on yourself at such a young age has got to be so difficult. So I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
What you bring up, I think, is so important, this idea of how, I imagine, we all as humans, but with the panel, how much we live with loss, how much there is to be grieved, even if we're deconstructing something that we wouldn't choose. It's weird, right? Yeah. It might not be something you choose, but still there are things still to be grieved in that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and obviously, Mormonism doesn't have a monopoly on marriage and family and all of that. So I think that's still just a natural thing to want. And I think, no matter how I was raised or whatever, that would have been I really feel that natural pull toward
absolutely.
That. But having that added
it's
pressure,
an extra layer.
It's an extreme pressure.
Yeah. And as a side, we will be doing a Mormon story in the near future with someone who has a story around infertility. So, anyway.
Well, I also think it's hard because a lot of the church culture, it's almost acceptable to ask, why haven't you had kids yet when there isn't any basis to get into your personal life?
Right.
And I have close friends and family, and they get mad. They're like, you have no idea what I'm going through, what's been done. And the audacity really to ask why haven't you had kids yet? You've been married X number of years. And it's that is actually not your prerogative at all to know
it's
this.
That boundaries.
Yes.
That boundaries thing within Mormonism. That's right. Where it's we don't have this level of relationship actually, brother so-and-so.
Weirdly, we know what's going on with the church. Churches want to grow, and you grow primarily by having babies. In fact, it's the higher than average birth rate in the United States that's actually keeping the Mormon church from being in decline in 2024, because the average Mormon couple has 3 babies instead of 2 or 1, all the people leaving the Mormon church are for now kind of being offset by all the babies that are being born. But as soon as the birth rate continues to drop, which it is, and as more and more people leave the church will begin to be in decline. So for that reason alone, the Mormon church has a vested interest in lots of babies being born, or their church starts to shrink, and who wants to be a member of a loser church that's dying? So that's number one. But also the church has done studies to find out what keeps people in the church, because you want tithe payers, you want butts in seats, you want people doing all the callings. And they found that the number, one correlates to faithful, active, lifelong membership is going on a mission, getting married super young, and having babies almost immediately. And that's why they've invested in BYU Provo, BYU Rexburg, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, et cetera, because they need these marriage factories so that you're getting married, finding your mates, and having babies. All those Mormons who were raised in Illinois, go to high school in Illinois or California, if they don't go to BYU and they stay at their local junior college or community college, they're out of the church within a very short amount of time. So it's sort of an existential issue that the church push young marriage, young babies, young baby making, and all of this, or the church literally starts to go away. So I just have to note that's kind of why that pressure you're all feeling is there. I'm sure you all know this, but for those who don't. Anyway, I'm so sorry that there's such a dark cost to the church feeling a need to grow and to be perceived as a successful growing church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I just say, those are all the practical, right? Like kind of like business side of things kind of reasons, but also, they have very compelling spiritual and doctrinal and kind of this bigger picture, right? And that's what we hear. Like that's the messaging.
That's the conditioning.
That's the conditioning. That's the messaging. The whole gospel is centered around families and around eternal families, and so that really plays into it. And I think there's maybe those ulterior motives, or kind of the back room where the sausage gets made, but it's really presented as such.
That's how you experience it.
I mean, such a spiritual, like that is, I mean, I like speaking about the temple, right? I went through the temple as a single woman, and I attended the temple a lot as a single woman. Part of that was, after I went on my mission, you get endowed and you're able to keep going back and doing that ceremony for people who have passed on by proxy. And so, and you're encouraged to go as often as you can. And being a student at BYU, it's almost kind of like a status kind of thing that, hey, like I'm endowed, I can go to the temple, right? Because not everybody can. And so I would go, but it was so painful because in the temple ceremony, and I think this part may have changed, but basically, without saying too much or being too disrespectful, but in this ceremony, all women would basically promise to not to covenant with Heavenly Father, but to covenant with, or to promise to obey their husband as the husband obeys and covenants with God. So it's like there's this sort of a mediator between. So that's already hard if you're married to say like, okay, well, you're not covenanting with God, you're covenanting with your husband, who's going to then covenant with God. Well, what about when you're not married and you're not getting married? What does that mean? Like what? I'm covenanting to follow somebody who doesn't exist, to then why can't I just make that covenant myself
with God?
Yeah,
directly. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dana, for sharing such a moving and heartbreaking kind of side effect to the church's emphasis, because the church could emphasize there are lots of paths. Some, we listened to Free to Be You and Me growing up, this musical that was put on by progressive liberals in the 70s. Some mommies are doctors. Some mommies are dentists. Some mommies are lawyers. some mommies don't have, some women don't have babies at all. And like the church could have a message like that. And that would make life a lot less painful, right? For a lot of people, 10% of their membership, right? So we're just noting that collateral damage. All right, Julie.
Yes.
How does the church's family proclamation, its expectations for what will make you happiest, work for you?
For sure. Yeah, as a convert, I do feel, I don't know if, because like I did voluntarily take the discussions, but I do feel that the church definitely does target people from broken families and sells them this the nuclear family ideal. And all of my church friends, like no one had divorced parents. Like everyone had the big Mormon happy family. They would host game nights. They would, open door policy, like, oh yeah, come over for dinner, and it was just the best. And
the thing is, the Mormons do get divorced. My parents were divorced.
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying that, like, growing up, I was the one from a broken family who was the convert, and everyone else had, just the best.
That's how it was perceived by you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously,
because my
people got divorced and stopped going to church, and I just didn't notice. But
that's right.
All of my core high school friend group, all of their, we would, have gatherings at their house and do game nights and dinners and all the things, and that was the ideal that was sold to me.
Sure.
And that was like, I don't like, there was pressure to get married and like, you'll have the best joy, this is, I was taught that like sex wasn't, that it was beautiful and it was so sacred. And that's why you want to get married, is because you can share that with your future spouse and that you can experience that and bring children. And like I was never taught that sex was bad. Thankfully, I was taught that it was so beautiful and so sacred that you should save it and preserve it. Like in Young Women's, we did, and the temple was very much, you kind of got beaten over the head with it, in a nice way, I guess you could say. But I mean, I've heard that this is quite common, that the young women leaders will bring their wedding dresses, and for a young women's activity, you will put on wedding dresses and go to the temple and take photos in modest wedding dresses as like 13-year-olds. And there was an activity where they put together hangers with like white silk on it and had us sign a contract promising that we would be virtuous and save ourselves so we could eventually hang our temple dress on this hanger. Wow. And I had that hanger until I left the church, and I threw it out with everything else. But it was just like, as somebody who's very duty bound, I signed that paper and I really believed in it, and that's why I followed it for so long. And in singles ward, that wasn't a student ward, that wasn't in Utah. It was still very much, it was the returned missionaries, and it was the people who were off track from school or home for, the summer. And it was people who weren't married. And it was very much, like, especially in Relief Society, I remember a lot of women, because we're always talking about marriage in Relief Society and how upset they were about how they hadn't found somebody yet. And it was constant. It really was. And it was very much, especially around 2015 when gay marriage was legalized, and it was like, well, this is happening, but the purest joy still comes from marriage between a man and a woman, and that's what your aim should be, and you can have a career, you can have this, but this should be your focus. And, the bishopric members were so kind, thankfully, but it was they were constantly being like, why aren't you guys need to, date more, get married. Marriage is the best. And it got so repetitive, and it was so frustrating to hear that from the pulpit all the time, because it's like, do you not think we're trying as hard as we possibly can? And I composed this Facebook post after I was really tired of hearing that, and I posted it on Facebook. I called it Dear Married People. And actually, can I read it?
Sure.
Not that long, I don't think, but it was it got quite a response from my ward, and some of the bishopric members reached out to me and they're like, thank you so much for posting that, because I did not realize how they don't think, not damage, but like how it wasn't helpful at all. And I was like, dear married people, we understand that you mean well. We understand that marriage and kids are great. We understand that it's worth it to keep sex sacred and that it's worth it to get married. We get it. We really do. But you all that ask us about our dating lives, those who encourage us to date more, to get out there and find someone, all of you who tell us we're not looking broad enough, who tell us we're
Not
being
looking what enough?
broad enough, that we're being,
Like you're too narrow.
yeah, we're being too picky.
Okay, got it.
That we're being too
Thank
picky.
you. Sorry, just want to make sure.
Who tell us that we should date, who ask us and then wonder why we get defensive. Stop. Please stop. Please stop and think for just a second. Stop and remember, or try to imagine what it was like to be single. Try to understand, to remember how fucking difficult it was to continue to date unsuccessfully, to try again and again the same inane first conversations over and over. The awkwardness, and then to like never talk to somebody again after trying really hard. The same BS, and the few times you do actually like somebody, they won't like you back. And just try to imagine that over and over for years. For years. It's lonely, it's exhausting, it's defeating, it is so draining mentally and emotionally. We talk to people, guys. We talk to so many people. We do it. We date people we wouldn't normally consider. We date people we may have been intimidated by a few years ago. We try, we fail over and over. And you were able to succeed, and you're happy, and we're happy for you. But please understand how much it sucks to see those Facebook posts, to hear your stories, even the bad ones, because at least you have a best friend and lover to comfort you. And how much it sucks that it seems like the only value we have is whether we're romantically with somebody. And how we're told to not settle, but also told that if we're not married by 25, that we're too picky. Heaven forbid, I should actually be attracted to a potential mate. And if we say no, you feel like you have to console us or encourage us. We don't need it. We don't want it. We know. We've heard it. Just stop. It's hard enough as it is. Mm-hmm. And
Snaps.
Yeah, seriously.
And I got one of my favorite bishopric members, who has since passed, actually. He reached out to me, and he was just at the next sacrament meeting, and he was just like, "Thank you." I honestly did not understand until I read that, and I really feel like I understand it now. And it was really validating to hear him say that it had an effect on him.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Beautiful. Well, this is great. So let's shift a little bit. And, we've already kind of described, so there's the BYU Single Adult Wars, which is kind of like the golden ticket, first class Mormon experience. But there's also this urgency to get married while you're at BYU, or you go out into the deep, dark world and your chances of marrying a Mormon just plummet, right? So then you do, and you're the second class or the third class of Mormonism are these YSA, Young Single Adult Wards, either along the Wasatch Front in Utah or in Idaho or Arizona, or heaven forbid, like somewhere East Coast, right? Or I hear there are a couple places in California with some pretty good YSA wards, like Huntington Beach, yeah,
Orange County area.
yeah. But anyway, we've described the kind of the third class coach YSA experiences, like the Island of Misfit Toys as a marriage factory, as a meat market. Who succeeds? Are there any people who succeed? And if so, what's the type of man who succeeds in those wards? And then what are the type of women who succeed? And we can say success, I'm bracketing in parentheses because obviously who even knows what that means? But maybe you guys know what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Jess, did you want to?
Yeah. So are you saying in that third past university?
I mean, this works at BYU too. So yeah.
Yeah. Because
who wins?
Okay. So I have a friend. She's conventionally attractive. She's blonde, which is very important.
What does conventionally attractive mean in Mormonism?
Oh, I don't know.
Long hair.
Norwegian. I don't know.
Long hair, petite, slim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's
more cute than hot, I would say.
Yeah. Like my friend, she's slim. She's very cute. She's very bubbly.
Yeah.
She's very committed to the church. She works at the MTC.
That's the missionary training center.
Yes.
Where missionaries are trained to go on missions.
Yes. She also is athletic and rich.
Yeah.
I mean, by my standards, compared to me, her family is quite wealthy. And she can line up 3 or 4 dates a day if she wanted to. You're
not exaggerating.
No. Okay. I had a class with her and I was trying to kind of plan something. She's like, oh, well, I have lunch and they have dinner and then I'm meeting up with someone between classes. And I was like, oh my gosh. So there's definitely a type, especially within like Provo and at BYU. In Provo, I do not do well for myself. I'm not getting the matches. But as soon as I like expand to like, I don't know, when I'm in Arizona, I do all right. If I go to like non-Mormon dating, I do all right. I feel like I do pretty average. But like in Provo, nah.
Yeah, please, Meg.
If I could describe like the perfect mutual profile for someone in Provo, you've got like the surfing picture on the back, like the back of the boat. You're in Lake Powell. You've got one with your friends, super bubbly. You may have one with like someone's face with like an emoji over it to show you've been in a relationship. You're like either hiking, you're doing some sort of sport, and then there's another one that you just look really cute in, and that is going to get you like views on views. I don't surf on the back of the boats. I wakeboard, and so that was obviously a ding to me on my profile. But that's just like the perfect profile, the perfect like image that you can put out. And I also know someone that very similar, kind of conventionally Utah, and like dates lined up left and right. And then I also found the same if going outside of the Mormon bubble has been awesome because viewed more for your personality than you are for like your looks and for your ability to kind of be a carbon copy of everyone else and all have the same profile pictures.
Yeah, and I do want to say, my friend, she's amazing. Like, I love her, and she's the greatest friend. But it is, whenever she tells me her dating woes, I'm like, all right, yeah. I'm sorry. But
tiny violin.
Yeah.
Tiny.
Yeah. It's like
bitsy violin.
and she's great. She deserves to find someone. But yeah, that's
interesting.
It is interesting. Or if you have a picture like at the temple.
Or if you have a dog.
With a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, but just for the record, Jess and Meg, neither of you feel like y'all fit the Mormon woman type for what boys are looking for, or do you?
Let me tell you, like Mutual never was able to like work the game.
So on Mormon Tinder
was not going. Hinge, and I specifically actually said it to non-members. That was great.
Okay. So Mormon boys, you found Mormon boys aren't super interested in you.
No, I also like put on my profile that I like worked in finance, and that was a very big turnoff because the woman is not supposed to be in like the high finance, like doing the thing. It was very competitive. So
okay,
got it.
And Jess, you can answer that real quick, and then I'll go to the others.
Sorry, what was it again?
You don't feel like Mormon boys are unmutual or?
I mean, there's
a little bit.
Okay, so when you're talking about like the archetype of like the Mormon boys who succeed in YSA, yeah, those guys aren't interested in me. Like there's,
okay.
There's
guys that you would like don't like you as much.
That's the thing is like I don't necessarily like those guys either. It's an interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, you're learning
works.
about your own attraction.
But you're supposed to like those guys, right?
Yes.
You're supposed to like. Those are the guys that you are supposed to like.
Yes.
Even if you don't.
Those are the guys who will make enough money so that you can be a stay-at-home mom. Those are the ones who will give you the towhead children. Those, like,
Blonde, right? Blonde? Yeah. I didn't know the term towhead until I moved to Utah as an adult. In Texas, I never heard that term, towhead. It's blonde people.
Really blonde.
Yeah. In my experience, those who like graduate YSA is what it's called. It was like, oh my gosh, it was always so frustrating when like somebody would, during fast and testimony meeting, they'd like go up on the podium just to brag about the fact that they got engaged. Like that was
I'm graduating YSA, y'all. But
Anything else you guys want to say about like what Mormon women succeed in YSA, or did we pretty much cover it?
I mean, I think that YSA is really interesting because there's like the gorgeous 10 out of 10 people, both guys and girls, that are like, they age out for whatever reason. Like they never get married. And then you have, for lack of a better term, the weirdos who like somehow get married at like 21. And you're just like, how?
So there's anomalies, you're saying.
Yeah. And it's like, if they got married and I'm not getting married, like what's going on?
Like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so I totally agree with that. However, I will say that like those, you know, the ones that you're kind of like, oh, you're kind of, you know, weird, and how did you get married so young? I'm also like, would I ever want to marry the person that you married? No, never. Like, don't sign me up for that. Yeah, don't sign me up for that. But as far as like conventionally attractive Mormon, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, right there, hair extensions, eyelash extensions.
There is a look.
Skinny, blonde, for sure, yeah. And you know, I'll say like I'm half Puerto Rican, and I have dark hair. I used to be a lot skinnier than I am now, but like I was never. I have curves. Like I've always, you know, had hips and all of that, which, you know, outside of Mormonism, like very desirable.
Yes.
I found out.
Yes.
In recent years.
Absolutely.
In recent years, I have learned like, hey, like, you know, hot commodity. But in Mormonism, like, too much melanin, too olive skin, too dark of hair, too outspoken, too opinionated, too, you know, ambitious, like you guys were saying. All of those things. So, but it's the hot and it's the spiritual, and you put them together, right? It's hot and spiritual, and what a dichotomy and what a mindfuck of trying to figure out that balance and how to be that person.
Yeah.
The amount of guys I went on dates with who told me I was too intimidating.
Oh yeah,
because I am assertive and I'm direct.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, you're not the sweet, you know, subservient,
Right.
like
Submissive,
defers to the man kind
you
of
have an opinion, which is just like, that's not okay.
Oh, you make dirty jokes? Oh, I don't think this is gonna work, you know? Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so the boys, the young men that usually succeed in the YSA awards, is there a type?
Oh, yeah. Return missionary.
Okay.
If you're not a return missionary as a young man, it's like bottom of the barrel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
If I could describe their mutual profile, it's very similar. You also are surfing. You have the Lake Powell surfing photo. You usually have a fish or some type of like
a fish you
like
caught.
you've caught
Some type of dead animal.
You've caught
any
there's
dead
some
animal. Maybe it's a deer.
Really?
It could be. There's multiple things. Yeah, there's multiple things that this could be, and it's so like.
What about a buck? Like,
Yeah.
It could-
I don't know the difference, John.
Yeah, there's
Bambi, basically.
I have a theory about this.
Wait. Okay, go ahead.
That just the fishing and hunting pictures, they're just one of the few pictures they have that somebody else has taken of them.
Yes, probably one with a group, because that you do have to show you have friends. You know, maybe one with your mom. I saw a lot of those, which are, you know, those are more cute. And then you have some sort of like tagline in there of like, just looking for someone to beat in pickleball. And it's like, awesome. Or like looking for, you know, my eternal companion. And then on Mutual, you can rate how like spiritual you are, which I think is fascinating. And so the guys are always like super spiritual and like temple every week. And I'm like, I know for a fact you're not doing that, but that is the perfect Mutual profile.
Oh, also mission picture.
Oh, yes.
You cannot forget. I mean, that kind of goes along with the RN thing. Is that's a big thing, especially if you served in like a picturesque European or American town or like a third world country.
Yes.
Okay.
And you sometimes, if you speak another language, you can put your profile all in that language, even though if you're like, you know, the conventional heterosexual white Mormon boy, you have it in Spanish.
Yeah, if you went to a foreign-speaking mission, like you were up here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Eastern Europe, European, like I've heard those are top tier destinations that you're
This
being
is
sent
interesting.
to. Yeah. But yes, that's the profile.
Okay.
In all seriousness, there was a woman who really wanted to come on the panel, and she backed out last minute for really good reasons. Because it's scary to come on Mormon Stories, I think, as you all might know. But she talked about, let's just say she lived back east in a very urban metropolis. And there was this dynamic where kind of those Wall Street Mormon boys could date women after women. Mormon, there was a huge
Endless.
shortage of like sharp or seemingly sharp and faithful Mormon boys. And they were like roosters in the hen house dating 10, there were 10 sharp Mormon urban women who were urban professionals to every one sharp Mormon man.
Yep.
And there was this huge imbalance. And I wonder if Utah has a similar imbalance where there's way more sharp women than there are sharp, faithful, committed men.
For those of you who have had experiences outside Utah with YSA or...
Yeah, I definitely saw that. In the Philadelphia ward, I feel like it was pretty evenly split. A lot of the women were getting education. They had jobs. So highly educated. I would go down and visit some people in Washington, D.C. That was the exact dynamic I saw of like women they were lawyers, they were doctors, they served in the military, just very accomplished. And there'd be like one or two guys and you kind of have your pick. And so you actually don't pick anyone because it's the paradox of choice. Yeah. And yeah, same thing. I'd visit friends in New York, very similar situation. In Utah, I haven't seen that dynamic as frequently just because there does seem to be more men and women. But I know statistics for just the United States, women are more educated than men. And I think that kind of creates a weird power struggle because there's a lot of women who, if you do graduate undergrad without a degree, it's kind of like, or with a degree, sorry, and not getting married. And then you keep going on, you're like, well, time to go get a grad degree or time to go do something else because I didn't do like what was supposed to be done. Right. I have a few friends that even mentioned that of like, I'm just going to keep going to school until I find someone. And I'm like, that maybe shouldn't be why you go to grad school because it's really hard, but to each their own.
Hey, dating's harder than grad school. Can I just say, I have two master's degrees, and that was way easier than dating in the Mormon church.
Mormon dating.
Yes.
Mormon dating.
Well, I mean, really any date. Like, dating sucks.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially dating as an adult, which, can I just add, I don't want to, like, throw us off too much, but it pisses me off when Mormon, or anybody who got married really, really young, right, 18, 19, 20, they talk about their dating experiences.
Let's get into it.
They talk about their dating experiences, John.
Yeah.
I made
what dating experience? What dating experience does a 19-year-old bride or groom have? They have teenage dating experience. They've never dated as an adult. They've never had usually it's their first, maybe second boyfriend, right? Like they don't know what it is like to date.
Yes, this is a great segue.
They have no real dating experience, and it's just kind of funny at this point. Like it makes me laugh. I'm like, like you know nothing, and it's not, you know nothing.
Yeah, most Mormons that get married at BYU date for like 10 minutes, they get engaged and then they're married.
Yeah, and like they're talking about like, oh, this one guy I dated and blah blah. I'm like, okay, until like you don't know what dating is actually like.
Well, let's jump into it. So, what's it like to date Mormon men? Like, this is the tea spilling part. Like, is it great? Is it not great? What are the best things about it? What are the hardest things about it? Where should we begin?
It is shallow as fuck, John.
Well, okay.
Because I actually, post-Mormon, I'm very active on Tinder, and I really enjoy the Tinder scene, and I can say with full confidence that Mormon dating is more shallow than Tinder dating.
So shallow how? And anyone can jump in. Shallow how?
It's like looks. Like, I mean, obviously when you're on the apps, it's always about looks, but when everyone looks the same, you're kind of just like playing the game. Like I know some of my friends that they were like, yeah, I just swipe up on everyone. And then whoever messages me back, I'll just like pick from there. And maybe that's just common across the board. I'm not exactly sure, but it's kind of like I can pick who I want, be what it may. And then when you go on a date, it's like, I think my best date ever was when it was 20 minutes in total. So we got to know each other well. Picked up, went through the Swig drive-thru, and then I was brought back to my house. And it was like, this was such a fun time. And I'm like, we didn't get past anything.
Okay, so Swig, tell everyone what Swig is.
Swig. Swig is awesome. Swig is the equivalent, it's like the coffee shop.
So describe, for those who are listening, describe what you're holding there, Dana, for those who are listening.
Okay, so, if you did watch Secret, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, you know that they are big swig fans.
Swig is?
But swig is soda, 44 ounces. Don't worry, this was extra ice, so I'm not drinking like 44 ounces of straight soda. But it's flavored soda. It's basically Mormon Starbucks. They're all over the place, and it's where mommies can do their drive-through, get their Diet Coke, get their sugar on, and yeah.
And there are other brands too besides Swig, right?
Yeah, well, Swig is the original, John.
Okay, thank you.
It was started in 2012 in St. George, Utah.
Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you, Dana.
So,
thank you.
Yes.
What are the other names?
I think there's like Fizz, Sodalicious,
Yeah.
Okay.
Quench It.
Yeah, the new one.
Okay.
Swirl. Yeah.
And this date was so fast. Why? Just put a fine point on it, Meg.
So I will say, this was the second date. The previous date was a NICMO. So
Wait, what is that?
that's a non-committal makeout.
Okay, what is that?
Basically, you meet up and you just make out, and you like usually watch a movie, and then you're not actually watching the movie because you're making out. And then it was like, this was such a great time, we should do it again. And I was like, okay. And then we went to Swig, and I was like, yeah, we're done. So he went into, I call it the graveyard. In my phone, I put the names, like whatever their name was, I make it the graveyard emoji instead. Ooh. And they're in the graveyard. Yeah. So if they message me later, I'm like, I don't know who you are. You're in the graveyard.
Yeah.
You're dead to me.
Yes.
NICMO is essentially a Mormon one-night stand.
Okay.
Or like Mormon Netflix and chill.
Okay.
Without the sex.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Mormon
Okay.
version. Yeah.
So Mormons do make out.
Oh, yeah.
They do more than make out.
Okay.
Okay, so people have probably heard of soaking. I think that's a myth, but
To tell our viewers and listeners what.
right. So that's basically where you all the way into like penetrative sex, but you don't move back and forth. You just sit there, and it's supposed to not be technically sex.
Okay, so let's back up. Why would Mormons, BYU students, engage in soaking?
Because they can have sex.
Okay.
Well, they have agency. They can if they want to, but they're not supposed to. It's
Well,
in
they
the
get kicked
honor
out of
code.
school.
They'll be kicked out. Like,
Yeah, it's in the honor code that you get kicked out, and then also it's a grave sin.
Sin next to murder.
Yeah.
Right.
So Mormon kids, teens and 20-somethings, 30-somethings, they're all stuck with this high libido, a very sexualized culture, and they're forbidden from sex.
Yeah. So I've had a couple in my days, the NICMOs. I remember I had one where normally they're at least like nice about it, but this guy, it was just kind of like, all right, get in here. All right, we're going to pick a movie. And then just immediately he was like on top of me. And essentially he was like grinding on me, and he like missed. He was like on my hip bone.
Missed?
Yeah. Like he was right.
Well, that's not technically the right area.
For who?
Maybe that was his goal. I don't know. But
Yeah, this is good.
yeah, and so he basically, it's awful. He like used me to get off. And then afterwards he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my stamina isn't great." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah, I wanted more of that. I wanted that to
I
go
was
on
like,
and on and
I'm
on.
fine that it's over. I should not have come over here, And I have.
So the date was let's get her to watch Netflix with me so I can
Get off.
Yeah, so essentially masturbate.
Yeah, basically get his needs met.
Yeah.
With you as kind of a prop.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, what was consent like on that?
That's an interesting question because, I went over there,
Yeah.
It's always a little bit different, Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just making out. Sometimes, I've never had a guy use me to finish before in that, that's in a very strange way. But yeah, usually it's pretty innocent, just making out, maybe like some touching.
Right.
But, upper body.
Yeah.
But that's forbidden too, right?
What's that?
That's forbidden too in Mormonism, right?
Well, there's these pictures going around of like, I don't know if it's Sunday lessons at BYU or if it's like a class, but they'll say like, oh, this is like the talk to the bishop zone, and it'll have like hand to upper body or like French kissing or, you know, stuff like that. It's very, very funny and informative. But yeah, going back to consent, it's very interesting because especially, I've been learning a lot about myself, and I'm learning that I think I'm kind of demisexual in that I need like an emotional connection before I can, you know, be sexually attracted to somebody.
Yeah.
But you still have a sex drive. And so sometimes it's like misguided. I'm like, well, you know, I got to do something with this. But then once I'm with someone, I'm like, I've never met you before. I'm totally turned off. I don't. But then you have this expectation of like, well, I got this far. I don't want to be like this wench that's like, no, like get out. You know, I don't know where that comes from. But
Interesting.
So
People pleasing, maybe.
yeah.
So here's the trick. Like you were trying to get chosen by these Mormon male priesthood holders. You got to be pretty, you got to be thin, you got to be bubbly. And I'm sure they want to know that they're attracted to you and you're attracted to them. So you're simultaneously, and you're taught as Mormon teens that you're the gatekeepers. You're the guardians to both their chastity and yours. So on the one hand, you're the gatekeepers to keep everyone pure, yourself and them. And on the other hand, you're trying to get chosen. They're wanting to check you out and test you out, take a test run. They can't take it too far, but they want to take it as far as they could take it without getting into trouble. And that's where soaking or this weird Nick Mo hump fest thing that happened.
To your right hip.
Like it's this weird, he's trying to, you know, get his needs met in this weird way without breaking the rules. And then you're an object that I'm just curious, like this Mormon kid who's in the NICMO relieving himself, does he think he's not sinning because he's humping your leg? Or like, because also Mormons can't masturbate. So like, explain to our audience what's going on there, the attempts to kind of navigate all these complexities and what's going on for you trying to balance that, and all of you, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't super dissected that interaction that much. But one that I have dissected, I kind of alluded to this earlier. There was a time I was, oh gosh, I don't remember if I was 18 or 19, but I was really, really young. It was my first year in college. And of course, I'm like, okay, I want to get married. I want to find somebody. And I was having a really hard time like matching with people who I also was interested in and thought were attractive. And I matched with this guy who I was like, oh, this guy is super cute. He seems really awesome. I was really excited. And he came over to my apartment, and I was at Utah State first. So this isn't BYU. There's no honor code, you know, but I'm still like, you know, I'm trying to be righteous and keep all the commandments. But this guy, he comes over, and we start kissing, and then he asks to take it to my bedroom. And so we went there, and it went a lot farther than I was comfortable. Like, I had never, the closest I'd had was like, I wasn't even experienced making out fully. I was like, whatever. But this guy, he starts like taking off his clothes, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And I feel like there's this, you know, we talk about consent, and when you're being educated correctly, you learn about enthusiastic consent and how it needs to be quite clear that the other person is also into it. I'm positive I was like not quite clear into it. But he encouraged me to touch his genitals. And at some point I was like, you know what, I'm sorry, you need to leave. So it didn't get to a point where I felt like I had, you know, super sinned, but I still felt really bad because I'd never done anything like that before. And so I went to my bishop and I told him what had happened. And I hadn't really, now I see it as like, I wasn't giving enthusiastic consent. I wasn't feeling comfortable. I did it because I felt like I needed to, because I'm trying to find a husband. This guy's very attractive. I don't want him to think that I'm a prude and then never talk to me again. And so I was like, well, at the time I was like, well, this is my problem. I need to figure this out. But so I explained the story to my bishop, and he goes, that's strange. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, I don't know, I guess, and I had been working on my mission papers or wanting to go on a mission. He goes, well, I guess don't take the sacrament for a couple weeks, and we'll have to postpone your papers for a couple months. I don't remember if it was like 4 months or 6 months, but it really threw a wrench in my plans. And now looking back on it and being like, I didn't need to confess to anything, but you know, my whole life was moved back almost half a year.
You're being punished because this Mormon kid wasn't taught proper consent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were kind of blamed for it and punished by the bishop.
Well, I even, you know, blamed myself a little bit. I was like, well, I let him into my room. You know, all this. And anyways, so there's just like a lot at play.
Yeah.
In these situations.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I just say, like, I'm so sorry that happened to you, and like, but like,
Been worse.
yeah, like for sure, right? Like, but it's an emotional thing to like hear about your experience, and I know we've all had experiences like that, and I just want like people who are watching this who maybe are not, you know, into like they haven't been in this scene before, maybe they've never been in a YSA ward, they've never interacted with Mormon young men. This is unfortunately so much more common than it should be. This is not, you know, like, and it's your story, and I'm like honoring that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to minimize that at all.
No, yeah.
But that is very, I mean, any Mormon young man that you see, right, that has the priesthood and is wearing the white shirt and tie, you know, there's a good chance that this is something that they do and probably do somewhat regularly, and I know that from personal experience. I know that from other people's experience.
And you're saying what? Just so people know, what is it that most Mormon young men do?
I mean, they engage in sexual behavior, whether that is consensual or, you know, non-consensual or somewhere in a gray area, which, you know, the gray area is not consent, but especially in Mormonism, that can become very, very blurry and nebulous because there is, you know, there's the line of, you know, sex in marriage is beautiful and sacred, but before that, it's just like a total no-go, even though, you know, we know that young people, everybody, right, we're sexual beings, and that's totally natural and normal, but young women especially, I think, we just don't really talk about sex the way that young men do. So, you know, because I think about that sometimes, and I'm like, really, like, though, does sex have a place in the church, right? Like, is that church's responsibility? Well, it becomes the church's responsibility when they are holding bishops' interviews with youth from 12 up and asking about their sexual experiences. Then sex becomes, you know, the church's issue. When they tell you that, you know, when something like that happens to you, that it's your responsibility to go and confess that to a bishop, that sex becomes a church's problem. When they're hammering into, no pun intended, young men about masturbation and porn, right? And not just young men, but even adult men. And sex becomes the church's issue. It does.
Yeah.
Could we just take a minute and we'll make this into a short for like YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Since I, in all my years as a Mormon man, the word consent never came up, not once.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in 2024, there's zero Mormon church supported training on mentioning that consent is a thing, let alone teaching young Mormon men or women or young men or young women what consent is. So could we just do a round robin? Could we educate young Mormon men and women to the extent that they might need it, what not to do, what consent is and what consent isn't? And we'll turn this into a little short. So just extemporaneously, let's educate young Mormon men. What should they do and what should they not do? Who wants to go first?
If someone says no, it's a no. There is no type of trying to explain it away. It's no.
Okay. No means no.
And if somebody says yes, and then later on they say no, it's a no.
It's a no, even after a yes.
Silence is also not consent.
Yes.
Okay.
And to be a little more off the cuff, to quote my friend Richie, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no.
All right.
Enthusiastic consent.
Yeah.
I've heard it described as a hell yes and a high five. Okay.
Whatever version appeals to you best. Yes.
I think also, like, I've had a guy, I was just talking. We were on a second date. I was talking, and he just kissed me while I was talking. Maybe if you're, like, in a relationship and, you know, kissing is just kind of like a normal, like, physical touch between you, but, like, a second date, and I was talking, don't do that.
Okay.
And on that vein, just because you are in a relationship with somebody, consent still applies.
Yeah.
There
Consent
can
still
be
applies.
marital rape or relationship.
Yeah.
Rape, yeah.
And there's really an imbalance, I think, in Mormonism. Young women, this is my experience at least, young women are very, very naive. And Mormon young men, I think, just, you know, for whatever, I mean, they're talking about sex in young men from what I understand. So inherently they have more knowledge. And I think just also naturally that's kind of, you know, just more of a thing for young men. But Mormon women are so naive and they get put into this ward, right? Bringing it back to YSA, they get put into this YSA ward and they're with men who could be from 18 all the way up to 30 or 35. Most of them are in their 20s, right? But you have a 21, 22, 23-year-old returned missionary, and you have an 18-year-old teenage girl who just got out of high school. She has no idea what the fuck is going on, what the fuck is happening.
Yeah.
And this young man who has a lot more life experience and a lot more sexual experience, she might not even understand what's happening.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And I would say for the women, you're empowered to say no, point blank.
One time I had a guy over. To be fair, he wasn't Mormon, but I had a guy over to watch a movie, and we were like, I was kind of like laying back on his chest while we were watching the movie, and he put his hand on my boob, and I like pushed his hand away, and he put his hand back, and I pushed his hand away, and he put it back, and it's like I shouldn't have to say, "Don't touch my boob." Granted, it was like in high school, but still, like, you know, if somebody pushes, that's, you know, I'm clearly don't want you to do that. So, yeah.
I think somehow also people think that they can be sneaky. I was dating someone. We were pretty early in the relationship, and we were watching a movie and we were cuddling, and I like felt a hand coming around my side up my right breast, and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh. I was like, I have nerve endings there. I can feel you trying to feel me up. I don't know what was going through his head, but you know, somehow I feel like guys try to be sneaky about it.
Mormon men have no concept of women's nerve endings. Yeah, period. End of story.
Okay.
But then there's the entire other end of the spectrum where I have known people who have not kissed until they've gotten engaged. Mm-hmm. And so that one of my young women's leaders, she was very proud of the fact that her first husband, at least, they did not kiss until they were engaged. Mm-hmm. And that stems, I think, a huge aspect of Mormon dating is the rhetoric from the first presidency in past years of any two people can make a marriage work if you put like the church and God first. And I think that that's an aspect of the shallowness of Mormon dating as well, is that if you're a return missionary, if you have a temple recommend, if I'm, moderately attracted to you, cool, let's do it. And if we don't hate each other, let's get married. And I think that is a huge, like, especially people who date and marry their first, second boyfriend, that is a huge reason why they just jump into marriage, because it's like, oh, we get along. This is great. We want to have sex. Let's get married. Because we're both members. Your family's great. My family's great. We like the same things, I guess. And, they might not know each other very well, but it's just, oh, we met at the temple. Oh, you're both a return missionary. Whatever it is, and then you realize that, there's so many stories of people who then leave the church and realize, would I have married this person if we hadn't been Mormon? And if the church hadn't, told us that it would be fine.
Yeah.
Let's just touch on quickly this dynamic that I've been hearing a little bit about lately in sort of 2024 America, that there's kind of a crisis of young men. The young men are by a multiple more likely to die by suicide, that they're more likely to have depression, that they're far less likely to graduate from college now. I think the disparity, there's like a 10 or a 15 percentage point disparity right now between women graduating from college versus men. And young men aren't doing well. In fact, my understanding is sexual activity rates amongst men, young men and men, single men in the United States has plummeted, and single men are having much less sex than they ever had in multiple generations. So there's kind of a mental health crisis basically for young men. And that's kind of the opposite problem, right? They're in their basements, they're playing video games. And I don't mean to stereotype anyone, but I mean, there's a group. I think the incels is another movement. Do you want to talk about that and whether y'all have bumped into that or seen it, or whether you think it's a thing?
I would say, yes, incels definitely.
And what does that stand for?
It's involuntary celibate.
Yeah.
So people who really would like to have sex, but nobody would like to have sex with them. Is, I don't know, best way I can put it. And I would say that's kind of, as far as the men go, it seems like that's kind of who is left over in a singles ward, after like a certain point, after a certain age. That's kind of what you end up with.
And that's something women notice and talk about, when they're talking sometimes, maybe.
Yeah. I think that I've definitely seen it in the spheres that I'm in, like on the internet. I think that men have been ill prepared for like the liberation of women and like the empowerment of women. And women now expect a lot more from men that they want to be with. I think maybe not like as a whole, but way more than they have in the past. And instead of being prepared for that, they've been taught by their fathers or church leaders the way that their fathers or church leaders have experienced interacting with women. But now it's different, and they haven't been taught as to what they need to do in order to live up to our expectations, which aren't crazy,
but well, let's do that. Let's do the same thing. So like Mormon men, what you're about to hear is kind of the extra for what modern, let's just say educated, enlightened women are wanting and needing, in addition to what you learned in Mormonism. Go ahead.
Mental work. Like that's been a subject that I've been, hearing a lot about. Instead of saying like, "Oh, honey, what should I do to help?" Thinking about what would be helpful and doing it.
Mm-hmm. Other things?
yeah, partnership, it's not patriarchy. And I'm going to have a voice, I'm going to have an opinion, and I'm going to share it. And I'll listen to yours, you listen to mine.
And that doesn't come natural in your experience to Mormon men?
I think it depends on how you're raised. I definitely have noticed a dichotomy between those that I've dated that aren't members and those that I have, and it's definitely easier for non-members, I think, just because you weren't raised in a structure that kind of told you the man was in charge, the head of the household. That's what I've seen.
So in your experience, non-Mormon men are more partnership-based, less patriarchal than Mormon men?
Yes. Yes.
Jess, you too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had much experience until recently
you're at
with
BYU,
non-Mormon men, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think it's like what Jess said, right? Like feminism, there's just some men that feel so threatened by that. And I mean, I've been out of the church and kind of away from that scene for long enough that I don't really claim to have a pulse on that right now. So I can't really comment on that. But I would say, overall, I think, yeah, women, we are expecting a lot more because that's what we deserve, right? Like, and so I think just kind of coming to expect that because we are learning about our worth in a different way. That's kind of the new expectation.
I think a lot of Mormon men in particular go from living at home to getting married, and they don't live on their own first. And they go from having their mother take care of them to having their wife take care of them. And I think it's been a huge detriment to men in particular to have the missionary age range be dropped because they don't have that gap year. They don't have that time away at college to establish themselves and to find their own footing in their own life and what they want. And it's men, because they don't have deep emotional, not always, of course, but they usually don't have deep emotional relationships with their friends. It's very surface level. We hang out, we play video games, we go fishing, and that's it. They don't, there's a joke of like, hey, my buddy's getting divorced. Oh my gosh, what happened? I don't know. I didn't ask. And it's like, and it's a joke, but it's also like they don't think to ask. They don't have those deeper emotional bonds with their friends, and men frequently find that in their partner. And so they are not fulfilled emotionally unless they have a partner. And because women usually have emotional bonds with their friends, they choose to have a romantic partner. We don't need a romantic partner. We want one. And men usually need one to feel emotionally fulfilled. And it's, they will use their partner as their therapist. They will use their partner as their maternal surrogate instead of as a partner. And I think that men need therapy. Everyone needs therapy. But men, they need therapy, especially if they come from a patriarchal society or patriarchal culture, and which most men do, even if it hasn't been as high demand as Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness or whatever. And they, to figure out what they want and what they need and to make themselves happy without external validation. Yeah. And, so many men, like one of my very low bar criterias on dating apps is to like a guy who looks happy. So many men are just kind of dead behind the eyes, and it's really sad. Like, even if they're smiling, it's like,
yeah,
it's not like they don't look happy. And, we don't want some women want projects, but people who are very set in themselves and they want a partner, they don't need a partner. They're looking for somebody to complement them and to match their enthusiasm, to match their effort. And if you're not already happy, if you're not already fulfilled in hobbies, friends, if you hate your job, whatever it is, if you're looking for someone to make you happy because you aren't there already, then all you're going to do is bring your partner down.
It reminds me a little bit of an interview we did with Allison Schiffler. She's a local therapist here. in the Salt Lake area, where she was talking about how patriarchy hurts men as well. And she kind of goes into this idea of women have their own version of the harm and all that it does, and men do too. The disconnect, to themselves, just like we have a disconnect to ourselves, and how that, manifests itself in, toxic masculinity, not feeling your feelings, not being aware of feelings, not knowing how to emotionally connect in meaningful ways with vulnerability. And I think, so relating very much with what you're saying, and kind of a deeper why, and what is actually lost in patriarchy. And it's a loss for everyone, really.
Yeah, I can say I've definitely had experience with that. I had a partner who he didn't like me, like he didn't feel comfortable for some reason, like having me talk with his parents or like introduce me to his parents or talk with them on the phone. But they would like ask him to thank me for taking such good care of him while he was out on his own. And that was...
So the parents were hoping that a woman would step up and take care of their son.
Well, I think they were hoping that somehow their son would be okay. He had a lot of mental health issues, which at the time I was very drawn to. I had like that savior complex where I was like, I'm going to help this guy because I can relate. I've been there, but I've realized that that's not good for a relationship.
Right.
And
kind of a codependency.
Codependent.
Oh, yeah. It was very toxic. But I've realized that like that, and I have more to say on this, and it might come more into play later, but
you can jump in now.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about and how things went with this person, and the way that revelation played a role. And the other night I was thinking, there's a quote by Joseph Smith, and he says, "Some revelation is from God, some revelation is from man, and some revelation is from Satan." And my whole life was taught that like my mind wasn't really my own. My mind was like a battleground for God and Satan. And some thoughts were from Satan, some thoughts were from God, some thoughts were my own. And I was tasked with distinguishing which ones were which. I think that some people don't bother with figuring that out. They just kind of say, oh, well, like some of these thoughts are bad, so they're Satan. Some of them are good, so they're God. And I think that lack of, looking into yourself and sorting out your emotional ecosystem in your own self leads to a lack of self-awareness, and that leads to a lack of emotional intelligence. And that ultimately leads to codependency or manipulation or coercion or even abuse. And so, that was my thought.
Yeah, that like really resonates quite a bit. And I had no idea, like just this idea of codependency, I didn't know that existed until I was like almost 30 probably. But looking back, I think it becomes such a huge dynamic within the Mormon culture and, between men and women and kind of like this, the like savior coming in, right? Not the actual, it's not a good word to use.
To be clear.
About, like the superhero, right? Coming in to save the day and to rescue. And that is kind of, and I think it also comes in with like benevolent patriarchy, right? Where we're like, oh, like women are so great, right? They are just there. We couldn't live without them, right? Like nothing would function without women. And that includes like men's emotional regulation and their being able to just take care of themselves without having somebody, whether it's their mom or their partner or their wife, step in and, you know, handle things. And I love like emotional intelligence, right? Like bringing that up. That's so huge, where I think that is a huge thing where it doesn't feel maybe like equals in that area of emotional intelligence, and where it really is the woman that is bringing that to the table and then having to come in and kind of like pull that out of a man kind of a thing, and kind of help them to develop that rather than expecting them to, you know, come in as a full person themselves.
I also think that for both men and women, especially in the YSA scene, you feel like you're waiting. That there's no point in doing something because you're just waiting to get married. And that once you're married, then your life begins.
Yeah.
And that it's like, oh, well, I'll take care of that with my partner.
Right.
I'll do that, you know, side by side with my partner or whatever. But in reality, you should be working on yourself the whole time so you can meet somebody halfway. And there's just, there's definitely just this waiting, like your whole life is on hold until you get married, until you can have kids, and then you can go back to your home ward, and then you can do this, and then you can do that. And you know, they're, especially with, you know, a lot of women enjoy having children because of the attention they get during pregnancy. You know, it's like, I don't know, you know, you get parties thrown for you and all that kind of stuff, and everyone is always asking you questions. But, you know, if you don't have kids, if you don't want to get married, if you're, you know, you're kind of invisible, especially like as an older single in the church, that you're just, you have like no value. Right. And it's like, they don't consciously think that. Like, they would never say that, of course, but that's the subliminal messaging that it's like, oh, well, it'll happen for you in the afterlife, you'll get married. But once you hit 30, it's like, oh, too bad. So sad.
And don't you find it within Mormonism too, you know, there are all these these lessons that I think members like to kind of bring out. So if you have an older single woman in your ward, it's almost like, see, look how sad that looks. Like, you don't want that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or kind of the foil to that, being like, well, look at like Sherry Dew, right? Like, Sherry Dew is this like amazing, you know, author, and she's this spiritual powerhouse. And if she can be single and be happy and live the gospel and have that hope for her eternal companion when she's dead, then, you know, like, you should be able to do that too.
So it cuts both ways.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's, you know, like, that's the expectation of, well, I guess that's, you know, almost like your child to bear or whatever kind of a thing. Like, it didn't, you know, if it's not going to happen for you in this life, you know, it'll be next life. But it's, there's definitely like these figures who, on one hand, you know, it is kind of like the cautionary tale of you don't want to end up like that. But then also, if it's looking like you are going to end up like that, it's like, but look, you can still, you know, serve in the church and be faithful.
That's an interesting point that you bring up too, because I think culturally that exists as well. Outside Mormonism, I feel like a single woman that actually chooses to be single and not have children, like some of those assumptions and kind of what the public at large wants to say about that. So then it's like a layered situation where you're getting it wherever you go. There is no, safe place for you to.
Because like, I'm child free. I've chosen not to have children anymore. And that's mainly because of my experience in the church, because, funnily enough, because like the ideal was sold, like Christmas morning and, you know, family game nights and Disneyland and that kind of thing, and the happy family. But, you know, I work in childcare and I see the realities of having children. And like, most people who want children, they see the ideal. They, you know, they have the happy family, and so they want, you know, it's like, of course I want kids. I come from a happy family. I also want children, or the vice versa. I come from a broken family. I want to have a big, wholesome family. But like, do they factor in, what if one or all of your children have autism? What if they have disabilities? What if your partner dies or you get divorced? Are you willing to be a single parent? And so many people want, they just think of it as, it's like, oh, we're married, that's it. And it's like, yeah, but do you want children enough? Do you want that dynamic enough to be willing to risk all the negatives? And I don't think enough people actually critically think about the effects of their choice. And especially in Mormon land, where you're taught that it's the greatest joy ever. And if you are a regretful parent? You have your first child's great, then your second child, doesn't sleep, has anger issues, whatever it is, and there's no space for you to be like, I regret being a parent, and something's wrong with you. You're not faithful enough. You're whatever it is, and I think it's really damaging to say that if you're faithful enough, or this will bring you the most joy, and so when it doesn't bring you the most joy, you're the problem. Yeah.
And that's interesting because, your story, Dana, was heartbreaking and it was so moving. And I have so many family members, let's just say nieces, nephews, cousins, who are choosing not to have kids by choice. That's kind of a generational Gen Z, maybe millennial Gen Z thing, where I bet a lot of people are washing out of Mormonism just because they're childless by choice.
Yeah,
is that
sure?
Have you seen that?
My little brother, he's 6 years younger than me, so he's kind of on that cusp of Gen Z, and he and his partner have decided, that that's not, at least for now, but it's been a few years, they're pretty set on not having kids. And I think, honestly,
there's no way in Mormonism that's okay, right?
No, that
get
wouldn't,
up in sacrament meeting
be,
and say, we decided not to have kids.
That would not be socially acceptable. And, of course, there's always that choice, but, at what cost is that choice going to bring?
You're selfish.
Yeah. But, I mean, honestly, right now, I think not having kids, it's the cost of living, right? How are we actually going to pay for these children? That's a huge reality right now. Yeah. And also just, the state of the world that millennials have come of age in and Gen Z, it's scary. I don't know. In some ways, I'm like, it would be great to adopt a kid who needs a home that's already on this earth, but why are we going to bring more lives into this mess? That's just, my
That's a very common sentiment.
And I hear as well mental health. There's more of a sense of informed consent around pregnancy, childbirth, parenting, where literally some of the reasons are mental health. I have no assurance my mental health can handle my life now, let alone adding more stress to it, or my body, physical health consent to actually birth a baby and go through with some of the risks of that and what happens. And so it's a whole different, I feel like, way of looking at it Yeah,
I think I definitely have some mental health struggles that have caused me to consider those very things of how is this going to affect me? What is it going to look like? And talking, when you're in Mormon and dating, it gets brought up very quickly of so kids, let's get into it. And then currently dating someone that isn't a member. And it was later in the relationship of being it's a big, scary thing, but I'm only wanting 1 or 2 kids. And it was well, duh, have you considered the economy and just the cost, everything that's surrounding it. And I want to make sure that you're able to still have a fulfilling, enjoying life. And I'm oh, that was just not the answer that I was expecting to get in a very good way. Yeah. But that's definitely a consideration. I think that a lot of people are again, it's you have your choice. You should choose this though. Over and over.
Interesting. Really quickly, I've heard about this dynamic where Mormon men are taught that they're priesthood holders, that, that if anyone's going to have that direct line to God, it's going to be that Mormon man, returned missionary. Have y'all ever had experiences where Mormon men come to you and say, the God told me I'm supposed to marry you, or, where the Mormon man thinks that they're receiving revelation, not just for him, but for you as well? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, so that's a myth in Provo, but it's also very much a reality. I've had many friends who have said that they've had some permutation of that happen to them. And I was always well, if that ever happened to me, I would run screaming the other way. However, with sufficient priming, that can be a very effective whether on purpose or not on purpose, manipulation tactic. I was in a relationship that was on and off again for a while with this guy. And he was never really sure what, if we should be together. He was always kind of like, I don't know, like, are we right for each other? I don't know if this is the right thing. And I would, we would try to work it out, and then it would be better, and then it would get worse anyways. So one of the last times that we were broken up, he was not doing great. I was getting calls, voicemails, texts. And then one day I was outside and he walks up to me and he's beaming. He's so happy. And I was like, what's your problem? Like last night you were crying to me. What's going on? And he was like, oh, well, can I talk to you tonight after I have a meeting with Bishop, but after that, can we talk? And I was like, sure. And so he comes back from his meeting with the bishop and we take a walk and he starts giving me this spiel about love and marriage. And there's this Jeffrey R. Holland video about taking the wrong road to be confident in the right road. And he basically goes, I prayed and fasted and I begged God that if he would, make me confident that you were the one, that I would be the most righteous, devoted person. And I got an answer that I can be with you. And normally I would think I would have run away screaming, and I probably should have at that point, but there's just a lot going on, on one hand, I was 24 and I was like, I'm running out of time.
You're like, I've been chosen.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I've been chosen. I'm 24. I'm getting to old hag. I'm probably going to graduate soon. What are the odds that I find someone else within the church who will want me? And I've been steeped in this BYU paradox of choice, cookie cutter. I'm like, I don't know. I might never find somebody ever again. And then also I'm like, okay, well, he's being reasonable here because he was like, well, you should get your own answer. And
sounds like Joseph Smith and Martin Harris in the
That's what I was going to say. This is very early Mormon, the roots of Mormonism really come down to this idea.
Does anyone recognize this story?
Yeah,
have we heard it before?
I mean, it is undue influence. God told me, but go ask God for yourself.
Right. Yeah. If I trust this person, we've had, 7 or I don't remember how long, 7 to 9 months, together, kind of and a lot of trauma bonding. There's a lot that went on in this relationship. And so I trust him, I see that he's a very,
earnest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Earnest in his seeking for revelation. And so what am I going to say? No, I think you're wrong. But I was like, yeah, I think that's reasonable. I will pray and find out. And so I was like, okay, we can get back together. And I was praying to know if we should get married. That's where it was. And I was praying, I was fasting. Well, I didn't fast that much. I don't like fasting, but I was praying really hard. And I was just getting everything under the sun. I felt super happy. I was hopeful. I felt peace at times. Here's this guy, our whole entire relationship, I have never felt secure, and that he was going to, I always felt like at any moment he could be like, no, and now I have this guarantee from God that he will stay with me and that he is confident. And so, there's that. And I feel really happy about that. But I also, with all of these positive feelings, am feeling occasionally, often, this deep dread. And I'm trying to figure out where it comes from. Is it God trying to warn me that this isn't the right thing? Is this my own anxiety? Is this Satan trying to keep me from progressing on the covenant path? And I just could not figure it out.
And motivate, as someone who has a training in psychology, motivated reasoning and confirmation bias are very powerful human dynamics. So if you've been told your whole life, your whole purpose is to have some Mormon boy pick you, and you're aging out because you've been conditioned to think 24 is old hag territory, then your cognitions are going to push you towards wanting to receive that revelation.
Yeah.
You're going to be biased towards assenting to that young Mormon man's quote revelation.
For sure. Well, and can I just say, like, how sad is that it's not about that you're madly in love, right? And that you have just like such a connection, or that you feel safe with him. It sounds like you didn't feel safe with him because you felt like at any moment he's going to walk away, right? Which is kind of how I felt with Mormon dating most of the time, was like, hey, anybody else could walk in here. Again, because it's not this deep connection. It's the, any two righteous people who are somewhat, compatible, like attractive, like it's going to work. It's going to be fine. So like, it's sad that it's to a point for him and for you, for both of you, where you have to like take that to, Heavenly Father or whatever, and try and interpret these messages rather than just feeling it for yourself and having this deep connection with a person, because that's what marriage should be, right? That's what partnership should be. And the fact that you're making these decisions based on trying to like figure out what Heavenly Father's trying to tell you rather than what you are feeling and what you want for yourself.
Because I think the data show that if you wait to get married, late 20s, early 30s, even late 30s, your probability, your likelihood of marital satisfaction goes way up. Mm-hmm. And if you wait to have kids, on average, you're going to be a better parent if you wait to have kids. So it benefits the church to get married young, to get married young and have kids young. But it doesn't benefit the individual, and it doesn't benefit the spouse, and it doesn't benefit the kids. Mm-hmm. The only thing that really benefits is the Mormon Church from pushing this narrative. Everybody else loses relative to, I think, what are the optimal choices, I think, on average.
Yeah, and conversely to like having that kind of confirmation bias of like, oh, they've chose me, therefore you kind of like give yourself the answer. I have a friend's husband. They've left the church too, and he didn't realize until after he left the church that so many of his like spiritual promptings that were like, oh, you shouldn't go to this place, or this is a bad choice or whatever, he just had anxiety. Like it had nothing to do with whether this was a good or bad choice. He had anxiety disorder and chalked it up to it being the spirit. So.
Yeah, I'm convinced that this guy thought that I was the best he was going to get and was trying to make himself want to be with me, if that makes sense. And I think that he created that answer. And ironically enough, the thing that saved me was it was my patriarchal blessing. It talks about like, it really makes a huge deal about who I marry. And so because I valued my patriarchal blessing and I was trying to be very careful about who I was going to marry, I took long enough, I think it was maybe like 2 weeks, that I still wasn't getting an answer. And I think he got spooked. And he iced me out. He, didn't want to talk to me, didn't want to be around me. He kind of like ghosted me almost. And I essentially like had to break up with him. He like forced me to break up with him. Because I think he just didn't want a door to come back to, which I think is just another example of like that emotional illiteracy or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I think that another really big thing too is when you are older, you're able to handle conflict better. You're able to reason things out, talk, and really have a relationship where both of you are able to come to the table. Whereas if you get married younger, like your brain just isn't developed. Like that is,
It's not.
That's fine. Like that's scientific. Like
He's like 26, right?
yeah, like your brain isn't developed. And so conflict, I think it invites a lot of codependency. I think a lot of toxicity. And I think that creates a cycle where you're both codependent, you're needing to talk it out, so you go to church to try and figure it out, and it's just this cycle over and over. And I think it doesn't lead to a lot of satisfaction for many couples because you haven't had the chance to grow and develop. You didn't ever have the full, like, ability to have your brain developed at age 26.
Yeah, and on top of just being married, then having kids right away too, most of the time, a lot of the time. And so now you're in some cases still a teenager or maybe barely 21 and you're having children. So you're trying to navigate life with this person that you may or may not be madly in love with. And your prefrontal cortex is not developed all the way and you're having babies and you might still even be in school and trying to finish a degree all at the same time.
That's right.
And I think that depriving young people of living with and experiencing relationships with a variety of people with different communication styles and different attachment styles and different levels.
Attraction templates.
And sexual compatibility and all that stuff. Especially like even roommates, you learn what kind of person you're compatible living with. And there's
they got that on their missions with their missionary companions.
But I think there's was it the really racist advice about like don't marry somebody of a different race because you start on like a much more difficult foot because you're so different.
Or even don't date non-members because you don't come from.
Well, and it's like I do think that there's some wisdom in that but like politically and sexually, and it's like if you date, if you marry the first person that you like, and you don't even know like what kind of can you communicate? Can you do this? And it's like when you're that young, you don't think about that kind of stuff. Yeah. Like it's not even in your realm of like, it's just like, oh, it's so fun. Oh, he likes me. Oh, he's so cute. Or like we have so much fun.
There's a line in the outline about Disneyfication of Mormon dating. Can you guys describe what that is and how it plays into things?
I think this comes from when you're very young because one, temples are beautiful, absolutely beautiful buildings. Mormon temples, yes. Yeah. And you have this beautiful white dress. And I think that it's very similar to like a Disney wedding where it's like the happily ever after occurs there, and then it's the end. And you just always are good after that. And I think that is where there's a lot of, it's obviously not like taught into you, but I think it's definitely represented. I also think,
What is Disneyfication in a Mormon context of a Mormon dating?
I mean, I think there's different like versions of it. Like I think there's like the Disney princess, right? Like the fairy tale happily ever after kind of thing. But then also, I think to me, it kind of goes along with infantilization of adults. And, you don't
have real conversations.
Yeah. And you're not considered an adult, like fundamentally. And this comes like just with the whole idea of having a YSA ward in the first place is that you are not an adult until you are married. So you could be 25 years old and not married and you're not an adult, but you could be 20 and be married and you are, all the rights, responsibilities, privileges, all of that is bestowed upon you because you are married.
In Mormonism.
In Mormonism, yeah, definitely. So there's this idea like in YSA boards, you really are treated like children and you don't have any real leadership roles or leadership responsibilities and everything is just fun and happy, and it's kind of like this.
So what? Like you can't be a Mormon bishop, or you can't be a leader in the young men's, or a leader in the young women's, or relief study president in a traditional family ward. What? Unless you're married?
Yeah. So unless you're married, I mean, with YSA, right, young single adult wards, they're completely separate congregations from a normal or like a mainstream congregation. So already you're being segregated and kind of put into a different place, sometimes, a lot of times even in just a completely different church building. And everybody in that congregation or that ward is a young single adult, except for the leaders. So the bishopric of that ward, the bishop and his counselors are married men. Usually they
drawn from the local community, not from the ward membership.
Yeah, no, because you're not married if you're in the YSA ward. So they come from the outside, right? They bring them in to be leaders, and their wives as well, because they all have to be married. Their wives become leaders in the ward as well, and so there are leadership roles, like you have a Relief Society president who is a young single adult woman, and you have an elders quorum president who is, right, single, but then you have like advisors. So a bishop's wife, for example, might be the Relief Society advisor. So, you know, for example, I was a Relief Society president in one of my YSA wards, and I was not like a regular Relief Society president, right? Because I had this married woman, this older married woman, who kind of oversaw things and actually, you know, approved things or made decisions. So it's kind of like this extra level, because we know in the church it's patriarchal, right? And that there's the stake president and the bishop, and those are the guys really making all of the decisions. So in a regular ward, then you have your Relief Society leadership, but they're really just, you know, underneath the bishop. Like, they're never actually making decisions. You have like a whole other level below that in a YSA context, because now you have the married women on top. Like, so you have more layers.
Interesting.
And so really, like, there's no, you're still a child. It's like you're playing. Oh, that reminds me of Brad Wilcox, right? Playing church. In a YSA ward, like, you're playing church, right? You're kind of like getting some practice of leadership roles and responsibilities, but you're not actually in charge.
Yeah, it's like they're gatekeeping adulthood. Yeah. Like, I don't remember the context, but I do remember like being in like a ward council, because I was a Relief Society counselor, and I did like activities a lot, and just like half jokingly but not jokingly reminding the bishopric that it's like, we're adults, like, we're, you know, we pay bills, like, we live on our own, like, this isn't, you know, just because we're not married doesn't mean we're not grown-ups.
Yeah.
And they were still treating us like we were in mutual, or, you know, young men's, young women's, and it's like, we're college graduates, like, we're adults, we have careers, half of these people own homes, like this is, yeah.
Fascinating. Let's do a little bit of a firing round. There's some topics that I want to get to and just kind of touch, you know, just at maybe a bit of as we're, you know, towards the end. First one is, and there's many. Can we talk about worthiness? Many quick things to talk about. Machine gun, rapid firing.
Quick things.
So really quickly, worthiness, you know, violations of law of chastity or word of wisdom stuff. You're not supposed to have sex. You're not supposed to drink. You're not supposed to do drugs. That sort of thing. And then you've got these bishops that probably have different policies and practices around enforcement. You've got confessions of if you make out with somebody or go too far, who confesses and who doesn't, and what are the consequences, for example, if you're in a BYU ward. Rapid fire thoughts on worthiness interviews in a young single adult context. Who wants to?
I was always too scared to do anything, so
what would you do?
I have no horror stories. I just was like, buy the books.
So you were just a good girl by the church's
100%.
standards.
Oh yeah.
You just avoided
I was going to be perfect.
Yeah.
You don't I was going to get an A in church.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, I was not perfect by any standards.
Okay.
And I did a lot of very like embarrassing, I mean, in some cases almost like humiliating, having to go into this man. And again, like, I am an adult woman. And I mean, we could talk about as a teenager too, but it's like kind of a different dynamic going in as an adult. So yeah.
What'd you have to do when you, just so people know? Quickly.
So, you know, like so you go in and you confess, right? If you feel like you have the need for whatever it was that you did, and, you know, telling the bishop what happened, what you did, and then he kind of counsels with you, usually reads some scriptures with you. Usually it's, you know, you don't take the sacrament for a couple of weeks or whatever, depending on what it is. However, once you have gone through the temple, then, you know, it becomes a lot more serious. And so for me, that was the case. I had a few years after I went through the temple where I was still in the church, and, you know, that it is definitely, you know, causes a little bit more complications, like your temple recommend, usually gets taken away for a period of time, depending on what it is.
It can be shaming if the YSA ward does temple night, you can't go and everyone wants to know why. Is that right? Or
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, it's a shaming function.
Yeah.
Or you can't take the sacrament and everybody can see.
Yeah, well, and
when
even
the bread
just,
and water comes, you're passing
even just
it by.
having like going to the bishop's office, right? Like,
oh, you're standing outside waiting, or you're sitting in the chair waiting, because the previous one went long, and people are like, "Why are you waiting to see the bishop?"
Or like, you know, you got to like contact the ward, you know, the person who's setting up the bishop's appointment.
Might be a single,
which is usually,
man, right?
and you're like, "Hey, I need to meet with the bishop," you know, and it's just like, it's just a mess. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. And any other quick stories about that or experiences?
I think if we're talking about what it should be, if you are buying into the idea that you need to talk to the bishop in order to fully repent, that bishop needs training. And the bishop needs to have the idea that it's possible that there wasn't consent. He needs to ask, what was the situation here? Did you want to do this? Why, you know, are you safe, kind of a thing. And then from that point, working on the policy of reporting sexual abuse and things like that. So,
and I will say,
versus women being blamed for being the fault of whatever happened, right?
Yes.
When the male may have been the aggressor.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's face it, women can be aggressors too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I'll just add real quick. So when I lived in Davis County, I kind of had an experience with somebody that wasn't in my ward, a man who wasn't in my ward, but I felt the need, and it was kind of a weird situation. Like, it was kind of fuzzy as far as like consent and all of that goes, as it usually is. But I went and talked to my bishop alone, and just to kind of like get that off my chest and just, you know, tell him what had happened. And his response was, he's like, well, I need to know his name so that I can find his ward, so that I can talk to his bishop and let his bishop know, because he's like, he might be doing this with other young women or whatever, which, like, I'm very torn on this. Part of me is like, that's crossing a line, you know, like, we're all adults here, like, why, like, I don't want to have to give you his name, you know, but he was very insistent on that. And I'm like, this is going to be weird now, like, if he's getting called in by his bishop and he's like, why is this happening? But at the same time, like, maybe that bishop is trying to be a little bit more, like, being cautious of young women, and, you know, like young single adult women, and trying to maybe give some protection, or just trying to kind of caution, you know, like others, and let his bishop know, like, hey, like, this guy is out there and maybe doing stuff like this to other people.
Yeah, like, if it's assault, I'm a lot more okay with that than if it's just morality policing.
Yeah, and that's
like, oh, he may be having normative, healthy sexual relations with other people. Let me go call his stake president and get him in trouble. Because
for sure. And that's where, I feel, and honestly, like, it's been a while. So, like, it's a little bit fuzzy about what I told the bishop. I think it may have been because it was a situation where it escalated and, like, I was kind of like in a weird situation. Not to say I was innocent, but so I think that's probably why, which is, you know, like, props to him. Like, that's awesome if that was kind of, you know, I think that could be a good thing.
But isn't it weird to frame it in terms of guilt or innocence a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Definitely. Like, the whole thing's weird. The whole thing that I, like, went to, you know, go talk to him in the first place is just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, by this point, I was probably 20, I was 24, 25 at that point. And so, like, to feel and we didn't have sex, right? I'll just say that. Like, we didn't have sex. But, like, whatever it was, like, the need that I am feeling, because I was such a believer, right? And so I feel that my salvation depends on telling the bishop.
Yeah. Okay. Also, you know, continuing the rifle round a little bit. We've talked about you mentioned soaking really briefly. And I think you guys mentioned something called inchworming. Is that the new one I hadn't heard yet?
So this is news from, I know some people that are young college students down at UVU Provo area, and you both go into a room, you take your clothes off, and then if you find each other rolling around on a mattress, you've done it. And I really just don't know how that's logistically working for them.
You find each other.
You find each other just rolling around on the mattress. If it happens to go in, then it goes in.
And what this speaks to is like more, you know, young men and young women having sex drives, knowing that they can't, and trying to find ways to do it without breaking the rules. So that's what soaking is. That's what inchworming is. That's what jump humping is. And I'm actually not bringing this up to be salacious. It's a weird thing that
When you try to control.
Christian or Muslim or Mormon or Jewish Orthodox religious people are put into, where they're kind of put into probably an unnatural, unhealthy state, and it leads to weird behaviors. And is it just quirky, or is there a dark side to this?
Well,
You got memes and TikToks about it, so obviously there's something going on underneath that is very repressed.
There was a thing that went on, I think it was the early 2010s, where Provo BYU students, it was like a thing to like drive to Vegas, get married, and then get it annulled.
And I don't even
like,
know if that's
within
real.
Within a weekend, and like the first presidency had to come out and be like,
Don't do that.
That's not cool, guys. That doesn't work.
And I guess if I'll just, instead of just trying to be salacious, which I'm not, and Margie, I want to hear if you have a thought on this, but there's just the idea that if you want to have a healthy relationship, long-term marriage, you want to learn your own sexual template. You want to learn your partners. You want to see if you're compatible. You want to just develop a healthy sexual set of skills or experiences. And Mormon dating doesn't allow for that. And so, yes, there's these weird, quirky things, but isn't the tragedy that we're just not learning basic sexual health, sexual awareness, sexual skills?
100%. So like in my late 20s, I became very academically interested in sex and sexuality, and I would read books on like sex and marriage and things like that, and I found it really fascinating. And I thought that I had like such a high sex drive. I'm like, I'm going to have sex every day when I get married, and it's going to be the best. And it wasn't until I started having sex post-Mormon that I was like, oh, I was just a 30-year-old virgin and horny as fuck. And and I think especially a lot of young people who do get married at the height of their hormones, they're like, oh, we have the same sex drive. We want to have sex all the time. And then once you're actually regularly having sex, you don't need to as often. Or, you realize that your sex drives are different because your needs are actually met. And it can cause a huge disparity in marriages because, what is it? Like sex and finances are the two biggest issues in marriage.
In-laws. Not mine, though.
Of course.
Not mine.
But realize, usually one person has a much higher sex drive than the other. And that can cause a huge rift in a marriage, especially when you're like, oh, is this because we don't have the same sex drive? Or is it because maybe we didn't, we weren't able to sow our wild oats before we got married? And, is this because I want to try out other people? Or is this just because of, are we not compatible? Whatever it may be.
And how many stories have I heard where someone's gay or lesbian, but they didn't know until they got straight married because they never had a chance to really explore. Yeah. And now they're stuck with an eternal marriage where they're not only not necessarily sexually attracted to their partner, they might be repulsed by their partner. What were you going to say, Jessie?
I think it is important to learn about your own sexuality. Like I'm still learning things that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. But so in the past, I would hear people be like, oh, that's crazy that you don't have sex before marriage. Like, isn't it important to see if you're sexually compatible? And I never understood that. I would always roll my eyes and be like, it's just sex. It's just, you know,
do it.
There's no compatibility.
You just do it.
You just figure it out. But, as I've gained more experience, I've realized that you can be vastly on different pages sexually. Like this guy that I almost married, I would not have been on board with his sexual proclivities. I would not have been happy or satisfied. Mm-hmm. So, it is important.
You mentioned this at dinner. Are you okay mentioning what it was, or would you rather not?
Well, you already did.
Did I?
At the very beginning.
Okay, the inchworming thing or the bloating thing? Okay.
The bloating thing.
Okay.
But it is important to know what you like and what you don't like and what you're not okay with. And if you're not okay with something that somebody else, it's their main thing, it's not going to work. And you need to know that before you get married. So
yeah, and it sets you up for abuse in a lot of ways. And I just wish that I could have you know, I had a lot of great experiences growing up Mormon, but something that I wish that I would have had is just kind of more open communication and understanding about, you know, like, just I guess not even, I'm not saying somebody had to like sit me down and explain it to me in more detail than was done, but just more like the ability to feel like I could explore somewhat and not feel shame by it, and just to kind of understand more and just to explore, because you know, there is such arrested development, and you go through like being a virgin, right? Most of the time, most people, and, you know, having experiences here or there. But then once, you know, like you get married or you leave the church so that, you know, you could, no, that's not why I left the church. I didn't leave the church so that I could have sex, but you all of a sudden find yourself being a grown-ass adult with no skills and no knowledge and no understanding about who you are, and that puts you into like such dangerous situations. And I, you know, there's so many times where I, you know, things just get really dark or really scary, really dangerous, really fast, because you don't really know where the line is, or you don't know enough about yourself or about other people to be able to make healthy, safe decisions for yourself.
Yeah, great point.
And also, even if you choose to not have sex before you're married within the church, that there's so much miscommunication and misinformation within the church itself about what's okay and what's not. Like, you know, there was that, you know, at one point, you know, that memo went around to stake presidents that oral sex was like forbidden. Yeah. And it's like, did they publicly repeal that? No. And so some people think it's still wrong and some people don't. And, you know, some things that were in the handbook aren't anymore. And so your parents may have told you one thing, or older leaders may have told you one thing, but it's not technically forbidden anymore. Or some bishops are still using that same template, even though it's technically not forbidden anymore.
Because if a prophet said it, Spencer W. Kimball said it in the 80s, it should still be true because God doesn't change. Were you going to say something, Jesse?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll also say, like, Jess. John, you have, like, I think you said earlier that, like, masturbation is not okay. I have even found gray areas with that. I found a podcast of this, like, progressive Mormon, and she was kind of talking about the history of the church's stance on masturbation. And so I was like, interesting. And I went to my bishop and I was like, hey, like, is this okay or is it not okay? And he was like, I don't know. I think it's probably okay as long as you're not looking at porn. But yeah, it's okay. Masturbation's fine. Yeah. And he even asked me, he was like, hey, if you learn anything else, let me know.
So, yeah. And you were like, I definitely will not be doing that.
Yeah, those different standards are weird.
So confusing.
Yeah. Okay, next question in the firing round, politics. And I'm not going to ask this question from like a partisan standpoint or privilege one party over another, because I try and keep politics out of Mormon stories when I can. But one thing I learned from this past election in 2024 is that there's a pretty big gap between young men trending towards, you know, liking Donald Trump and kind of MAGA politics, like it or not like it, and young women in your generational cohort are tending to be more liberal, pro-choice, you know, feminist, more Kamala, you know, progressive. And again, it's just averages, but like a double-digit difference in. And so I listened to. I actually read a New York Times article where it was saying that's a big thing in dating is having such different political worldviews. In the Mormon universe, are there a lot of like Joe Rogan bros, like Ben Shapiro bros? Who are the other famous, you know, young Mormon YouTuber kind of people?
Jordan Peterson.
Mormon or just like...
Yeah, he's not Mormon, but...
Yeah.
No, I'm saying
that Mormon,
are young Mormon men...
Andrew Tate,
yeah. Are young Mormon men sort of extra... Are you finding them to be extra MAGA, as an example? And did you find that to be at all a factor in your dating of them, a problem?
Yes. In southern Utah, it was like Trump flags were everywhere. And it was like almost impossible to find somebody who wasn't.
And for you, that was a problem?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't do that. But
You don't do that?
You don't do MAGA?
I mean, but yes. But no,
You don't do that.
It's true. If you're a Trump supporter, swipe left. But no, because I mean, like, especially in southern Utah, like Trump flags are everywhere. Like, you know, the big Ford F-150s with like the massive MAGA flag.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. And the like that paired with the either hunting or fish photo. Oh, yes. And so I usually would just like chat with people from like Vegas or, you know, North Salt Lake, just because it was almost impossible to find somebody.
So you did experience that as being a problem in Mormon context.
But I mean, I would say that depending on the area, a lot of, you know, Mormon women swing conservative too.
Sure.
Like I had a roommate who I was shocked to learn that she had voted for Trump in 2016 because, you know, there are a lot of times I think they're single issue voters. She said she voted for Trump because he was pro-life.
Yeah.
So, and like that was the only reason.
Yeah.
So I think something that's fun, my undergrad degree is in quantitative economics, my grad degree is in statistics. So I can debate on the facts of like the economy, all this stuff that a lot of, when I was in the church, a lot of guys would go, well, the economy and all this stuff. I was like, let's talk about it then. Yeah. And that brought some awkward conversations when I would bring something up and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, well, you're debating someone that has a degree in like econ, so maybe next time don't. But I found that
full-on mansplaining.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to have that context. Now I'm dating someone that isn't a member, and it just like isn't that big of an issue. You know, we stand in some different political views, but at the end of the day, it's like we mutually respect each other. And it felt like when I was dating the Mormon context, as soon as I said like, oh, I don't support that, it'd be like, oh, and that was an issue. And there was a lack of respect that came after.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The big thing that I want to make sure and cover before we end is faith stuff. So 2024, you know, the past 5-10 years, it's the era of the CES Letter within Mormonism. It's the era of, we'll just say Mormon Stories podcast or podcasts, truth claims, openness of church history, gospel topics, essays. Like because of the internet, Mormons across the world, but certainly younger Mormons are, or it's the era of LGBT advocacy or feminism or anti-racism, because that's what Gen Z and millennials nationwide are about. On average, except for the men, on average, progressive politics and pro-science and aware of truth claims. So I'm curious, just generationally in Mormonism over the past 5 to 10 years, are most Mormon young men and young women literal believers? One true church, Joseph Smith was God's true prophet, no coffee, no tea, scriptures are literal, Book of Mormon is a literal record. Are they totally oblivious to Mormon themed podcasts and CES Letter stuff? Or are people more liberal? Are they nuanced? Are they like, PMOs, physically in, but really mentally out? What's the faith landscape in the young single adult scene? And just jump in, all of you, take your turns, whatever. So
I was terrified when I was like, oh, the CES Letter, it's like going to crush my faith. And I read it and I was like, I wish I cared more about the issues that were raised here. You're
like Book of Abraham, papyrus.
Yeah, I was like reading it, which is fascinating because I like love academics, and I was just like, I just really can't get into it. So that to me, it was like once that kind of happened, and I was like, oh, that's actually not something that really was an issue for me. It was more like, what do I truly believe? And that's what I've also found with other people in my generation. Yes, so truth claims, things are coming out, but a lot of it is personal choice and belief versus, I know there's always the shelf thing, but for me, that wasn't the shelf breaker.
Really quickly, though, is that because you were inoculated? Because the Gospel Topics essays come out, let's just say 2013, 2014, and they tried to, they kind of skipped the 30-somethings, 40-somethings and above, and they went right to the youth and started saying, oh, yeah, there's this polygamy thing, but don't worry about it. No, there's First Vision stuff, but don't worry about it. And there's Book of Abraham stuff. Were you kind of inoculated into not caring? Or were you just not taught Bruce R. McConkie, Joseph Fielding Smith, Orthodox type Mormonism, so you weren't set up to then be disappointed. I just wonder why y'all don't care, but we cared so much.
I think, one, I did hear both sides of it, of like the more intense doctrine and then kind of coming out and being like, okay, here's what kind of happened. I think I was just so like, again, just like, I need to go against the grain. I just like didn't care. That was really what it is. And that was probably not a lot of other people's experiences. It was like, people would say stuff and be like, yeah. Like that just didn't even faze me.
How about the rest of you? Is that pretty much all of you, or
So,
each of you take a turn on that?
I mean, I was all in until I wasn't, and it was I ended up finding the CES letter like on accident. I was not seeking anti-Mormon literature, for the record, and I read it and I was like mortified. I was upset. And
well, like a couple of the parts. What were some of the biggest ones?
Joseph Smith polygamy. I had no idea, right? And I served a mission for the church. I went to BYU and took the religion classes. I went to Institute. I went to seminary, right? No idea. So that was huge. Book of Abraham was huge. Just, I mean, all of it put together, right? It was just like, what, like what the fuck? And it was an overnight decision for me because it was just so like, this is not what I was taught, and this is what I base my faith on. And that quote at the beginning of the, it was actually in the movie last night too, about
the heretic movie.
Yeah. If, what is it? The Gordon B. Hinckley quote, like it's either all true or it's all not, right? Like it all depends on.
The church is either everything it claims to be or the biggest fraud.
But the biggest fraud, yeah. And I think that's like on the cover page of the CES letter. And I was just like, bam, there it is, right? And so for me, it was very, very black. I'm a black and white thinker. So it was very, very black and white for me. I've noticed, so with my own peers, kind of more millennial age, people who are still in the church tend to be much more progressive and liberal. You know, you'll see them walking with their Dutch Bros coffee. And like, I have a really hard time not being judgmental because I'm like, this is not right. And like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, like, I think it's awesome. I'm like, yes, claim it. Take back Mormonism. Like you go, girl, right? Like you do your thing. But it's really hard for me to not be like, wait a second, like, no, like that is not being Mormon. That is not like, you don't get to have the social capital and that, community and all of that, but also like pick and choose. I also taught high school for a long time. And so I see like these 18-year-old girls. So I kind of, like that younger generation, and they're like, in a crop top in class being like, yeah, I'm going to put my mission papers in, because girls can go on missions a lot earlier now. And I'm like, okay, good for you, but like that never would have been a thing. So I'm definitely seeing like big changes there, big shifts.
Others? So the CES letter took you out like in a day, you're saying? So
the CES letter, yeah, it took me out, John.
Okay.
It took me out.
KO.
I should be like a spokesperson for, yeah.
Okay, so you and Meg have slightly different experiences as it relates to the CES letter. Okay. Julie?
I think that people don't care until it hits something that they really care about. And so if it's something that is just kind of like they don't really have a big testimony in or whatever, it's like, it's just an aspect of it. And I don't think until it hits something that is like a core pillar of their testimony that they're like, oh my God, that was a lie. Like a big issue for me was tithing, because it had been a big part of my patriarchal blessing, and I really believed in it, and I believed I was giving to charity, and that I was helping, I was giving back, and that, that's what the Lord wanted me to do. And then I had a really bad month, my first couple months in Southern Utah, and I went to my new bishop, and I was like, hey, I really need some help with paying rent this month. Can I have a couple $100s? And he told me no, straight up. Nope, sorry, we don't do that. And I was just stunned. I'd never asked for anything before. And I was like, first stunned, but then I was just fucking livid. I was like, what is my tithing money going towards if to not help people like me? And I was just like, it kind of just opened my eyes to like, what is this institution doing? Like, where's that money going? Like, why? It's like everyone that I know pays tithing, and yet our ward budget is like $500. Like, where is that money going? And just being really, really upset about that. And that's still one of the things that makes me so angry, is that the average Mormon that goes to church and pays their tithing thinks that they're giving to charity and that they're doing their part to help the needy. And it's not going towards that. And I think that is the biggest scam that the church is currently doing. And it really bothers me. But for others, like I shared the CES letter with a friend of mine, and she claimed that she read it, and she said that it didn't bother her. And I was like, well,
just like Meg.
And I was just like, well,
I was like, I'm not going to church, but I was like, okay.
But I was just like, you don't care that Joseph Smith married 14-year-olds? And she was like, no, I believe that he was a fallen prophet and he'll have to answer for what he did. That's her apologist. That's just how she frames it in her head. And it isn't, I don't know if she'll ever leave, but it won't be until something hits a core pillar of her testimony and kind of opens her eyes that everything else, the shelf.
Yeah.
And
how about you, Jess?
I think my issues kind of like fall into the general two categories of like moral and also like truth claim accuracy kind of a thing. It's pretty spotty how I've been inoculated. Like I have been, but also in some places I absolutely have not. Like when I found out about the Book of Abraham issues, that one really caused me a lot of turmoil. It was right before my mission, and I was like, what if this isn't true? Like, should I go? I ultimately decided to have faith. And
because you listen to Mormon stories pre-mission, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What were you thinking, Jess?
Well, I am a very logical person, and I said, if it's true, then
it will stand up to
stand
yeah,
scrutiny.
it'll stand up to it.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then I fell back on, well, maybe we just don't know everything, and so that's why it's seeming this way anyways. And then during a district meeting, I had this really enthusiastic apologist elder that was our district leader, and he comes in and he's like, today we're going to learn about the Book of Abraham, and he gave us all this stuff about how it's actually correct and everything, and I was like, okay, all right, we're good. Come to find out, it was all BS and none of it was a good answer. But yeah, mine, it's based on the historicity of things. I feel like for me, the Book of Mormon has to be historical because that's what it was claimed to be. I don't think that the church gets to go back and say, oh,
you're not saying it is historical. You're saying if the Book of Mormon isn't historical,
yeah,
then the church falls.
Yeah.
It can't be just a metaphor
Yeah.
or a myth.
I think those are my all or nothing kind of issues. The moral issues I think are more iffy for me because, yeah, I really don't like that we were racist, and we are still in a lot of ways. And I really don't like that Joseph Smith married 14-year-olds and coerced, sisters and mother-daughter and all of these, and people that he had like adopted as his own daughters into marrying him and all of that. I was like, that's really not cool. And I really don't like, the way that the church uses money, the way that they, lie or not lie, depending on how you read Dallin H. Oaks. Those things, there's a little bit more leeway because if they were to change, if they were to apologize or change, then it wouldn't be an issue. But the problem I'm having right now is that they don't apologize and they're not changing. So.
Thank you. One word answer for all of you. Has the church's LGBT, no, this is just because I'm curious. Has the church's issues on LGBT people been a defining issue for you in terms of a problem? So, Dana.
Yes.
It has? Okay, Julie?
yes. Yes?
Yes?
Yeah. If I
Okay.
have one answer.
Meg?
Yes.
All right. Jess?
Yes.
Okay. Has the church's LGBT issues been more of a problem for you than the church excluding women from the priesthood? And if so, help me out with that. Or has the church's exclusion of black men from having the priesthood been a bigger issue for you than women being excluded from the priesthood? Help me out with that.
I think benevolent misogyny or benevolent patriarchy makes women like not care whatsoever about having the priesthood.
What do you mean by that?
That like you're like, oh, you don't want it. You're special without it. You're
saying you bought that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay,
like,
you're a victim of that.
Yes. It's just like, oh, they need it. That's
the
like
men need it.
The men need it
because they're inferior.
Yeah, you can have babies. You're super special, awesome. You don't need it. And if you go on a mission, you have the priesthood. How else would you serve a mission without the priesthood? And so I don't think I've met, other than like, I think in high school it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But
here's the thing,
I definitely think that LGBT stuff within the church is definitely more of a problem than women not having the priesthood, because I think it's so ingrained that men have the priesthood. That's their thing. They give blessings.
Here's the thing, though. Do. There's lame ass answers for the racism stuff and for the LGBT stuff. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand why women aren't outraged. Mormon women aren't outraged. And they're just like, oh, yeah, I'm upset that those people are being hurt, when they're literally in 2024, full stop second-class citizens in the Mormon church.
So
Dana.
I would say when I was a member and fully believing, none of those issues really were an issue to me. Because I just had so much faith, right? And I just, this is what the prophets want. And I have a very vivid memory of myself saying, talking about like LGBTQ people and their rights and marriage equality, and thinking like, man, and this was genuine, this was not me being facetious at the time, but I thought to myself, I'm so glad that we have living prophets to tell us and to guide us and to let us know that this is not okay, that gay marriage is not okay. Because if we did not have a living prophet on the earth to give us that guidance and that revelation, I could see myself really getting on board with this and thinking that it would be awesome, for gay people to be able to get married. But thank goodness we have this living prophet to give us this revelation, because otherwise I would have been so deceived, right? Because I would think that would be great. So I'm so glad that I don't, that was literally a thought that I had. Since leaving the church, of course, my views have changed very much, learning more about history, learning more about the racism in the church, learning more about some of the LGBTQ policies. The 2015 policy happened, I think, right before I left the church. And when I was still in, I hadn't heard about it at all. It wasn't until after I left and kind of started learning more and getting into, Mormon Stories podcast that I found out about that. And, so I think there was just so much that I was unaware of at the time. And as far as women go, I don't know why, but when I was in the church, that was no problem to me at all. I had no desire to have the priesthood. I must have just been, I was, right, from birth. I was taught that that's the way it is, and it was not an issue for me at all. And I remember kind of when Ordain Women and all of that stuff was going on, and women are like, we're going to wear pants to church. And I'm like, you guys are just okay, yeah, okay, you wear your pants, whatever. You try and go get your priesthood, but the priesthood is for men. This is an eternal principle. And so I was very, very satisfied with that. And now I see it very differently, of course. But at the time I was very satisfied with that.
So so I'll just put a fine point on it, and I'll come to y'all as well. But Dana, you're at a PhD program. Mm-hmm. Would you work for a university that didn't allow women to have any positions of leadership? Would you even study at or attend a university that wouldn't allow that?
No.
Yeah, you were fine if it was your church.
When I was in the church,
right. Meg, you're a statistician or a mathematician or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Would you work for a business let's say if they were a venture capital firm or a Wall Street investment banking firm that just didn't allow women to even work there, unless they were secretaries, would you go work for that investment bank?
No, I'd go file a lawsuit of discrimination.
Yeah.
She wouldn't be allowed to work there, John.
No, yeah, and I would be like, I'm going to work there. I have multiple degrees. Like,
And yet, if it's your church,
oh, I was mad. I was not on board with that.
that was always bothered.
Yes, I would ask why not, and my leader's job is like, tuck it away, put it on your shelf, and then bring it back down and be like, but why not? Like, why not? And they're like, well, you can like get pregnant. I'm like, what if I don't want to get pregnant? And they're like, well, that's the wrong answer. And so
They're like, you're off script.
yeah, and I was like, okay, but like, why not? Like academically speaking, like, well, just go search in the scriptures, and then I would go search, and I'm like, there's no mention of this, so nothing ever was really clicking. But yeah, that was one that I was not cool with.
Yeah.
So
could I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
So I know you're like a little bit younger than me. Do you kind of remember like the Ordain Women movement, and like how old were you? Like when did that? Because that's really interesting to me that you would have that like pushback against those like gender, norms, or like the
It was 2013
inequality.
and 2014,
2013,
basically. Yeah.
Oh, that's when. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, so I was about 13, and I do
Okay.
remember it was like that was like they are bad people that are doing this, and I was like, okay. And then as I kept growing up, and I was just becoming like really independent and really pushing back against the grain, and then seeing, I think it was in the Family Proclamation of like feminism as like a moral threat to society, and I was like, I'm a moral threat to society? Like, that's wild. That's wild to think that. And so after that, that's when I started really trying to dig in and get to a sufficient answer, and I could just never find one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jess, any final thing on that?
Yeah, you kind of stumped me there. I was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, why do I not care about women not getting the priesthood, but like black people and gay people? I think it's because the black issue and the gay issue or whatever, that sounds really bad. But with them, it affected men. And for me, I was like, okay, so men have the priesthood. Why can't these men have the priesthood? I guess like for me, it was just like a core tenet of my upbringing and of the church that like men have the priesthood, women don't have the priesthood.
So basically, you're an afterthought for you.
I guess, but I was just like, okay,
You're your
so
own
like
afterthought.
I think it's more of just like, if I'm accepting the doctrine of the church, which is that men have the priesthood, why don't these men get the priesthood?
Sure.
Especially like black men, they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like doctrinally, I can understand who can say, oh, well, like if you're acting on your homosexual feelings and that's a sin. Doctrinally, I get that. Outside of doctrine, I'm like, that's terrible. But I guess when I think about it doctrinally, I'm like, oh, okay, well, men get the priesthood. Women don't get the priesthood. So if it affects a man who should be able to get the priesthood, then that's not right. Stepping outside of a doctrinal belief, I'm like, yeah, that's dumb. Well, but yeah, from a believing perspective, I was just like, yeah, it's just how it is.
Yep. And John, like, I mean, as because I know, you're not a woman. I know. But like growing up in the church, and I think it's also very different for maybe like converts or people. But like when you have been conditioned that all of the leaders that you see in the church are men, when you are praying to Heavenly Father, when you are being shown pictures of ancient male prophets and reading scriptures about male prophets, and there are hardly any women even mentioned in the scriptures, and when you are watching General Conference, and every so often a really nice sweet lady will get up and wear her pearls and kind of start to cry a little bit, but those are the women that you see, like that. It's like completely outside of even the realm of possibility. Like if you don't see it, you can't be it, right? I didn't see it, and I just truly didn't even occur to me that it could happen.
Does a fish know they're swimming in water if that's all they ever know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Conditioning is super powerful. It's a super powerful, and we could ask you some questions right back.
No, I'm asking the questions here.
To show some of your conditioning.
I control the camera. Cut Margie's mic. Okay. Well, with that awkward segue. All right, so I think it's time to wrap up. And this has been a really important panel. I think we've covered a lot of really important topics. I want to give everyone a chance to kind of give closing thoughts. It can be words of encouragement to people out there that aren't finding women who aren't finding their path, or men. It can be recommendations to the church to how to fix things and make them better. It can be a rant or a screed or whatever you want to say. Y'all can have your, I want to give you each a chance to give some closing thoughts, whatever it is. So, Julie, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
My biggest takeaway from my experience in YSA is to just let young men and young women know that you have a choice to get married or not, and you have worth and value, whichever you choose to do. And if you want children, that's awesome, but I do encourage you to think critically about the risks and the dangers to your body or your partner's body, and whether that's something that, even mental health wise, postpartum depression is commonly known, but did you know that postpartum psychosis is also a thing? Did you, there's just so many health risks that come with pregnancy and childbirth. And if that's something that, in the theme of Mormon Stories podcast, informed consent, be aware of what you're taking on. Do you have the patience and the mental health to raise a child? And is that something that you truly want? Or do you want the ideal of what you've seen in media? And if you do want that, that's fantastic. And I think the biggest prerequisite to being a parent is wanting to be a parent. But because of the conditioning of, seeing everyone around you getting married and everyone around you having kids and having that being kind of drilled into you, that, you have to get it done and your life doesn't start until it happens. Make yourself happy now and make yourself the best partner you can be before you enter a partnership.
Beautiful. Thanks, Julie. Dana?
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thanks, John and Margie and all of you guys. It's been great. And I am just really grateful for the opportunity to get to kind of tell part of my story and to, hear everybody else's experiences. I think it's so powerful and so important, especially as we just talked about, women are largely silenced. We're kind of put into a box, right? And it's a very, small box that we have to conform to. And I just want to it's been 8 years since I left the church, and it's been such a journey. And I just want to say, to myself, back then, 8 years ago, and, at so many points in my life that, and to anybody, you are so much more brave than you think that you are, and you are going to experience so many things that you never ever thought that you would or should or could. And you're going to get through the other side, and life is so great and so wonderful, and there's so much happiness and joy throughout all of the hard that is inevitably going to be there. And it's okay to do it without the confines. And in fact, you should, right? You should get out there and live your life and be who you need to be and be authentic to yourself. And just to close, I have to bring out my scriptures again, the words of Glennon Doyle. This was
chapter 4, verse.
Yeah. But she's just amazing. And this was something when I, some hard things that I've gone through. This is kind of a quote that stuck to me, but she says, "This is the most revolutionary thing a woman can do. The next precise thing, one thing at a time, without asking permission or offering explanation. No one else in the world knows what I should do." And I love that. Unapologetic, no permission, no explanation. You just be you, do you, because that's how you're going to be the happiest.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dana. Meg?
So I think I'd like to talk to the younger Meg and say, fundamentally, you're a good person. Your worth doesn't come from belief. It doesn't come from disbelief. It just exists because you're human. And having a different experience and forging your own path and actually choosing is a beautiful part of life. Also, you live on a spinning rock in space. Do not get an A in church because you can't.
Wait, say that again. Do not what?
Do not get an A in church. You can't. You're not going to need it. No.
That's right.
Yeah. Your grade report.
Your grade, it's not your GPA. It's
D's get degrees.
D's get degrees.
in life, basically.
Well, we're still testing that out, John.
Awesome.
Love that.
Love that, Meg. Jess.
Yeah, so first of all, I would say don't settle. The guy I almost married found his person 2 weeks after we broke up, so you never know. But I'm glad that he didn't settle, and I'm hope that he's happy with his wife, and I'm glad that I didn't settle, and I will not settle. I also want to echo the sentiment that you don't need to get married. I really don't. It is not a prerequisite for a happy and successful life. I think the most important thing is just human connection. And if that happens to be romantic, and if it, progresses to the level where marriage makes sense and you're confident in it, then do it. And that's great. And I think that adds to a happy life. But I'm currently deconstructing the idea that I need to get married in order to be happy and successful. I recently, when I was in Young Women's, we put together a temple time capsule for us to open when we got engaged. And I haven't touched it. But the other day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to open it. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to have it sitting there on the shelf telling me, you still haven't gotten married. So I opened it up. It was very silly. And I realized I was a very different person back then than I am today. Mm-hmm. And I will continue to change and evolve and grow. And I need the flexibility to do that. I think there are a lot of things I would change about, the issues with, dating and sexuality in the church, in YSA. But a lot of them come from the law of chastity, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I do have a very niche suggestion. It is for BYU specifically. I don't know.
Yeah, bring it.
So Shane Reese is the new president, and they do this thing called Date Night with the Reeses, where basically all of campus is just, you can come and have a date night, and I don't know, they have like treats and different events going on. I would say that there is a much more effective way to help people get married. And I think that is to pay your student employees more. Because dating takes time and money. And I have found that me and a lot of the people I know are just spending all of our time working, because we work for pennies compared to what we know the church has that they could be offering. I don't have time to go on dates. I don't have time to build a meaningful relationship because I'm trying to pay rent and get my basic needs met. So I think that's something that they could do that could improve the way that people, at least at BYU, date.
Or subsidize the living expenses of BYU students more.
Or I'm sure they could expand it to some kind of program, even outside of BYU. But that is a solid suggestion that I think is feasible. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it ever happens.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So
that's great. We celebrate you all. Thank you so much.
And I'll just say the organizing these panels takes a ton of work, because you review the applications of dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of people. So Margie, you were the one that put this together. I want to thank you for making this happen. This would not have happened without you.
You're welcome.
And also a shout out to Bishop Bo, because Bishop Bo has been our back channel support for these panels ever since he appeared on the Bishop's panel. So thanks, Bishop Bo. We love you as well. I hope he's okay us mentioning his name. I didn't get consent. He's giving me the thumbs up.
Consent given.
Thanks, Bishop Bo. Margie, any final words?
Just that I really have appreciated this panel so much, and just, really celebrate you each. It's been a pleasure just getting to know the pieces that we have today.
Okay, final bullet question, one word answer.
Oh my gosh.
Did you dodge a bullet not marrying in the temple to your soulmate? Dana?
Yes.
Yes, for sure?
Yes.
Okay, Julie?
Many bullets were dodged.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Julie, yes? Yeah. Meg?
Yes, I'm in love right now.
With a never
With a,
Mormon,
not,
right?
with a never member.
Oh, how about that?
And very happy with him.
Does he sacrifice goats to Beelzebub?
He doesn't actually, which is
wow,
very
really?
nice.
What? He's just a nice guy?
He's, fundamentally a very good person because he chooses to be, not because the religion tells him to be.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
And Jess, you can plead the fifth because you're at BYU.
Well, I mean, I take issue with parts of your question because the closest I've ever come to a soulmate, I would not have married him in the temple. So
Nice.
even while I was a believing member.
You never came close.
So I think soulmate is maybe. Do I think I dodged a bullet with people that I would have married in the temple? Yes. But soulmate is a
And
different
hey,
thing.
we could explore the idea of a soulmate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we have time.
Another day, we'll bring you back.
Okay. Final question. Do you feel like you're happier and healthier out of the church, Julie, than you were in the church?
So much happier.
Really?
The plan of happiness made me miserable.
It's not counterfeit happiness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like you kept, I kept watering a garden that wasn't growing. Like it was just wasted water.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dana?
I would say yes, definitely. I'm happier, and yes, like life has challenges, like I said, and I think people sometimes like to attribute that to your status in or out of the church, but I know that is not true, and that the challenges that I've had would have been so much harder had I still been in the church.
Meg?
Yes, I've never been a truer person to who I am, and still lots of challenges, still lots of things I'm working through, but I get to choose them now.
Yeah. And Jess, you're under an ecclesiastical endorsement. So
I
you don't
am.
have to answer.
I will say we'll see what happens, but I do believe that I'm getting happier and happier every day.
All right. Well said. All right. Well, panel, thank you so much.
Yes.
Julie, Dana, Meg, and Jess, thanks so much for joining us on Mormon Stories. Y'all have, with excellence, carried on the tradition of the Mormon Stories panels. So thank you all.
You all get A's.
Yeah, Meg.
Sure, Meg. I
Yeah,
mean,
Meg. You get eggs up. You
Meg
get
would
A's on Mormon
appreciate it.
Stories, Meg. No, thank you so much. Thanks, Margie. It's great to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories Podcast. I keep looking at the wrong camera. Thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories Podcast. This has been great. We couldn't do this without your financial support. So thanks to everyone who donates to Mormon Stories to make it possible. We also lose donors all the time, and stuff happens. So if you value this content and want to see it continue, please become a monthly donor. Mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. And we'll be able to keep doing this sort of stuff. We also want to say we're always looking for cool people to interview, interesting stories, news stories, compelling storytellers, and we can't accept every applicant, but we're always looking, like Survivor, we're always looking for new applicants. Just go to mormonstories.org, click on the button to apply, and we'd love to consider your application to be on Mormon Stories. I mean, it's not so bad, right? It's not terrible. It's not terrible.
It's been good.
You got a dinner out of this, right? You got a pretty nice dinner.
I give you an A, John.
Yeah, I get an A?
You get, I'll give you an A. Yeah, I'll give you an A.
Margie, you too.
Yeah.
You
Margie
too.
gets an A
Actually, Margie
plus.
gets an A plus.
Oh, man. Reverse patriarchy. It's still hate, you know.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
feel sorry for you, John.
Yeah. So anyway, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care.